Open meeting?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, can everybody please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all. Okay. We're going to do things a little differently tonight. I'm going to ask to hold public hearing until after the public comments, until after the special presentation we have. So Ken Bond, our special guest, doesn't have to stay through public comment, and he's been on the road since 6 o'clock in the morning, and he could get back to, Westchester? Okay, so that's what we're going to do first. So what I'd like to do is just we'll approve the agenda, and the only thing on the agenda is, I guess, I'll just do something quickly on the audit. And other than that, and on fracking, we got the fracking bill. And other than that, does somebody want to accept the agenda?
Well, I apologize.
Sure.
So the two things you're adding is,
Fracking and the audit. We're not going to do anything other than I'll give you the copy of the fracking bills, and we could talk just about next steps and the fact that we finally got the audit in. So I'll just, talk a quick second, give it to the Rosanna, and we'll just go from there.
okay.
Okay?
Yep.
What?
So moved?
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I need a
Aye.
second first.
Oh, second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion so carried. Okay, first I'd like to thank all of you for coming out. I'd like to acknowledge a couple of special guests. We have Legislator Ken Wishnick, who is here with us from the county legislature, who actually had his bill on hydrofracking signed into law today, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. I'd like to recognize Councilman, actually a trustee, Stuart Glenn, and trustee and deputy mayor Sally Rhodes, and school board member Edgar Rodriguez, former supervisor Carol Roper, and thank everybody for coming. And so what we're doing is we're going to start with a special presentation. And we have Ken Bond, who is a expert in bond counsel, and I'm going to let Jean Gallucci do a little bit of a background on him. And so I just really wanted to start with a quick little introduction before Jean introduces Ken. Many of you know, obviously, that we've been talking about consolidation, and we just got phenomenal news on Friday that the governor signed our citizen empowerment bill into law, and making the community eligible for $1 million a year in perpetuity. And Ken is going to explain that, talk about it, and help us all understand as a community what this bill means for us. Then he's going to do a presentation on the middle school, and just a little bit about that. First, I want to just make sure everybody understands that the middle school and consolidation are not married. They're two separate issues that have been talked about in this community for a very, very, very long time. And since we have Ken, and he really has an understanding about this, and the town board authorized me to establish a committee to move forward on looking at this, I didn't want to move forward until I had a really better understanding of how this could work. And in the conversation with Ken, as he was explaining more and more, I happened to say to Ken, who had a meeting with me today to talk to me, to say, God, Ken, I would love for you to be able to present this to the town board. And he said, I'd be delighted. And that was on Friday at 5 o'clock when I called him to tell him that the governor had signed the bill. So Friday at 5 o'clock when we talked, he said he would love to stay and talk to us. And then Monday we sent out the press release. So it was very, very last minute, but we're delighted to have him. So just as a really just quick little update about the middle school, just a few things I want to say, and then we'll turn it over to Jean and then Ken. Back in 2001, August 9th, 2001, there was an article in the New Paltz Times, and I would just like to read the beginning. Former town supervisor Susan Zimmett is trying to broker a meeting between representatives of the town, village, and school district representatives so that they can look at future facilities planning as one community. At the last village board meeting, she suggested that village trustee Robert Feldman, town board member Steve Roolke, and school member Patrick Roush form some sort of visioning think tank. We need to accept that each of these governments have to stop living in a vacuum, said the former supervisor. We are really one community, and one that is growing too fast to be catty. The town hall is in dire need of fixing. Now remember, this is 2001. The town hall is in dire need of fixing. The library is in desperate need to find more space, but because of Sally Rhoden and her leadership, the library did find the space, but that's because she worked outside of government and you were able to do what the community wanted, and we thank you for that. Okay, that, blah, blah, blah. So I said, town hall is in dire need of fixing. The library is desperate to find more space. The school district has increasing facility needs, and both the town and village are working on creating or expanding recreational needs like Moriello Pool or the Field of Dreams. And we're all here because of the open space and need to work together to preserve it. And then it goes on with comments from the other people. So I've been basically talking about the need to share facilities, think outside the box, and figure out how we can, as a community, try to make the taxes affordable in New Paltz and stop working as individual governments and stop working in our silos and try to plan together. So I was talking about this back in 2001. A number of years ago, the way, and I've said this before, how this idea came to me was really more through Fred Betchen, who was our superintendent at the time, and I was a supervisor at the time. And Fred Betchen, who was very into the schools belonging to the community, had said back then that he thought the middle school would be a perfect government center, but he didn't think the community was ready for it. Well, here it is 15 years later. The schools need to do major renovations. We need to do major renovations with our buildings. I think the village has some problems too. And so an opportunity came because of what's happening in state government now, with the desire to get governments to come together, think outside of the box, and try to do innovative thinking. Our county executive, Michael Hine, has done that up in Kingston with what he calls the Strive program, and I actually have a bunch of copies of it upstairs. I forgot to bring it down, where he was able to use a school building and do a bunch of stuff and actually put a lot of things back on the tax rolls at no cost to the local taxpayers. So it was an idea that a lot of board members have been interested in, community members. Councilwoman Kitty Brown, who couldn't be here tonight with us, was very serious in trying to move this forward. And so it was put on the town agenda, and we talked about creating this committee. And I was supposed to reach out to everybody to get it going. But I didn't want to do that until I really got more information from the county executive, how we could maybe work with the Strive program, or I really understood from Ken how to make this work so it doesn't impact the taxpayers. And so because we have Ken here, we're going to put this on the agenda and talk about it. But I just need everybody to realize consolidation and the middle school are two separate projects. One should not influence the other, and that this board is very conscious of the fact that it's not our purview to decide what the school district does with the middle school. It's only our desire to try to work together collectively as one community, working together to solve our problems. And so we're trying to have this conversation because at a certain point, we are going to have to decide what we do with our buildings. We have no choice. We can't keep staying in this building. And so therefore, let's open up the conversation. And if the town has to operate on its own, we will operate on our own. But our hope and goal is basically to maybe get a bigger conversation. And there are ways that we could possibly do this without it costing the local taxpayer money. So I just wanted to set that up as an introduction. And what I'd like to do is let Jean talk about Ken's background experience and her experience with him, and then turn it over to Ken.
Well, I'm thrilled that Ken is able to give us the time to discuss this, front-facing issue, because Ken has a manner of explaining it in plain English that everybody can understand. There's no extra jargon or anything like that. I have worked with Ken and Squire Sanders for well over 11 years on bonding and borrowing issues. And he and his staff are always helpful. They provide excellent guidance, and the paperwork is impeccable. So I don't think you can top that.
And what did you tell me when I met Ken and I told you he was going to be our bond counsel? What did you say?
Ken is the rock star of bonding. Squire Sanders and Ken Bond are the rock stars of bonding. You can't do better than this. I've worked with other companies, by the way. It's not like I've only worked with them. They are by far the best, in my opinion.
And we all value Jean's opinion when it comes to finances. So with that, we'll turn it over to Ken and let him do his presentation. We probably should move.
No, you can stay there. Don't move,
don't wanna be-
unless you want to get out in front of us.
We don't want to show for the,
Okay. You want to,
That's right. You got your little doohickey to
and I have to
follow
say how much I hate that picture of me.
it. I love it.
okay, we got the lights right. Does this, can you hear me or should I use the mic?
You should use the mic because
Use
it's a
the
TV
mic.
camera.
Okay, very good. All right, well, can you go back to the beginning here? There are, by the way, handouts of this PowerPoint presentation, so feel free to take one home with you and read it and mark it up. My name is Ken Bond. I'm a partner with Squire Sanders, which is a big law firm with offices all over the world, and also a major public finance practice, really one of the earliest ones that goes back to the beginning of the 20th century. And it's a traditionally large and important part of our global practice. One of the things that's been going on really since 2008, when the economy collapsed, is finding new ways to provide infrastructure, funds, and efficiencies in state and local governments in order to reduce costs and deliver services and not have the price of those services go through the roof. You're all familiar with the fact that we rely heavily on the property tax, and property tax has been going up, and that's why we have a tax cap to try to keep that down, but at the same time, expenses don't go down either, so that there's this constant struggle and pressure. Many communities in New York now have what we call structural deficits. Fortunately, neither the village nor the town of New Paltz are in that situation, but it is a serious situation, and it's one in which government officials traditionally say, well, the situation will right itself in a little while, and everything will be fine. But this is a serious and long recession, and one in which probably some structural changes need to be made. So that's what you're considering here, the combination of the village and New Paltz into a single community. And then I will talk a little bit about the opportunities to cooperate with the school district and acquire one of their buildings as a central office and community center. But I thought what would be fun, before I did this, is to tell you a little bit about the history of New Paltz. Do you all know the history of New Paltz? Yes. Will I bore you if I tell you the history of New Paltz? You know, it starts back in the 17th century, right? The French Huguenots, who were tired of getting beat up by the King of France, the Catholic Church, so they moved to Mannheim, Germany, which is across the river from Strasbourg. And they set up camp there. Now, Germany didn't exist at the time. It had principalities, which all were part of then the Holy Roman Empire, and the center of that was in Vienna. And the guy who was in charge of this area was somebody called Frederick IV, the Elector Palatine. And the word for Palatine in German is Rhenish Paltz. So, familiar? So a lot of these guys these French guys in Germany probably got tired of living there with these people that didn't speak the same language and so forth. So they all got on a boat, went down to the Netherlands, which was then fighting its own war with the Habsburg Empire for independence. And the Netherlands at the time had a little colony in North America called New Amsterdam. And they came over, and they were all the same religion. You just kind of see the guys in New Amsterdam saying, well, you know, we're Dutch and you're French, so you can stay here, but go up the river a little bit, you know, get out of our hair, we'll protect you with Fort Orange, which is now Albany, but, you know, generally. So they took a very large tract of land, which was granted to them by the Dutch, and they wanted to give the place a name, and they had just come from Mannheim. I don't know if you have a Mannheim Boulevard here, and Mannheim Street, and they remember their German name for Palatine, Paltz. This became New Paltz, which is spelled a little differently. So that's the history, and it was a very large place. It encompassed originally what's now the gardens of Gardner. I can never say it right. Shungum, Esopus, and New Paltz. And the point I'm getting to is that it wasn't until late in the 19th century that the village, which is our client, was actually formed. And the reason it was formed is because it started to become a commercial center because of all the commerce coming up the Hudson River. Because in the early part of the 19th century, they built something called the Erie Canal, which became the most important commercial route for trade going to the western part of the United States for about 50 years. It was really the great strength of the state of New York, and why cities like Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, and Utica all became big commercial centers. So in the mid part of the 19th century, the state organized all of its counties and organized towns within counties, and that's why you have 4 towns, which was once one area called New Paltz. And as I said, you had commerce increasing, you had an urbanized area being formed, so they formed a village. All that's really happening in this coterminous relationship is you're moving in history over a continuum of about 400 years back one step. You would have one government for the town, including the village. So it's not really a radical thing in a sense because it's always been historically one community. You can go to the next slide. You can read that self-aggrandizing thing. Keep going. This is what I call the pre-engagement picture. We got this out of the newspaper. I really like it. Susan complains, but you know, they look pretty happy there, don't you think? They're a happy couple, right? Go ahead. This is a slide that sort of demonstrates the progress we've made to date. Back in 2010, they commissioned a long study and obtained a grant, established a steering committee, and it was produced by consultants analyzing the assets of the village and the town to see how this would all sort of work. In 2011, the final plan was introduced to the community, and essentially concluded that the coterminous village and town option was the best solution for a combination of the two governments. And then they ran into a bit of a stumbling block, which the legislation that allows for combinations of villages and towns and a grant for that, which is sort of the economic incentive to do it, didn't include coterminous village and town governments. So you needed to go to the state legislature, which is exactly what Supervisor Simmet did, and knock heads together. And just quite recently, there was a bill enacted to allow the combined village and town government to get the grant of $1 million a year as a credit. It's basically additional state aid as an incentive to do this combination, and we'll talk about that a little later. So that's where you are right now. Next slide. Okay, if you are going to continue with this process, these are the steps that need to be done. Both the village and the town have to endorse the proposed joint consolidation agreement and do the things that are listed here. There are a number of things. Some of them are pretty simple. Some of them are more complicated. The name. You don't have to use New Paltz, by the way. You can go on Mannheim if you want to. I say this because one of our clients, Sleepy Hollow, for many, many years was known as North Tarrytown. And they always felt like they were like a second-class organization because they were north of Tarrytown. So they got really ticked off and they changed their name to Sleepy Hollow. They had a vote, but it's a more hip community now. So you don't have to use New Paltz. I mean, you can, but you can use whatever name you like. This is just boilerplate stuff. The boundaries obviously would be the town boundaries, the type of proposed entity, which is the coterminous village town, fiscal estimate of cost savings. This is an issue that constantly comes up, and people who say, well, gee, you know, consolidation won't save us any money, they're right. And because initially you're going to be operating with the two governments and two sets of departments which won't go out of business, so to speak, until the consolidation actually happens and the thing gets to be operating. But my contention, and I'm not a proponent, I'm just here explaining this, in my experience is that when organizations have to coalesce and do things together, and their objective is to reduce expenses, if they're part of the same entity as opposed to two governments, which you have right now, then they start to find the cost savings, and the political issues and the policy issues resolve themselves that way. The value of the assets, the liabilities and debts. Incidentally, what happens in any kind of combination or dissolution, for that matter, of governments is that the debt of each separate entity stays the debt of that separate entity, even though it's combined. So that you wouldn't start paying, people in the town don't start paying for the village's debt and vice versa. Any new debt that's issued by the consolidated entity then becomes the debt of everybody in the community. But this doesn't start to cost the taxpayers or the residents in one community the cost of the other community's debt prior to the consolidation. In terms of a common administrator, now here's where you have quite a bit of flexibility. I mean, the old New Paltz, back a couple hundred years ago, was actually run by some kind of a board that had 12 people on it. And it occurs to me that you've got, what, 5 on the town council and you have 7?
5 on the village. 5 on the village.
5 in the village? So that's only 10. But, I mean, when you form, if you should form a new governing body, it could literally incorporate everybody who is currently an office holder in both the town and the village. You might want to make it smaller. I mean, really the only thing you're going to have to decide is who becomes the chief executive, the supervisor, or the mayor, or somebody else. You can go out and flip a coin for that, or have a duel, or whatever you want to do. But that's the only thing that originally, initially somebody has to go and somebody will stay. Effective date of the proposed consolidation, time and place for public hearings. Go ahead. Now, this is written by my law clerk, who's very good, so he put all this technical stuff in here. I won't go over this too much. But essentially, what you do is you have these resolutions adopted by each, both the village board and the town board, and you have to hold public hearings on them, and there are time limits when you have to have them. The hearings can be held jointly, or they can be held separately, and you can have more than one hearing, but essentially, it's a hearing on 2 joint resolutions with all the stuff that was in the prior slide, to form a coterminous government. And then you have the public hearing. The joint agreement can be amended, but you have to have the final version completed within 180 days of the last hearing. So there is an agreement which is essentially codified with these 2 joint resolutions, which basically say the same thing. One is at the village, and one has got the town's name on it. Then there are, once those resolutions are adopted contemporaneously, both boards would pass a resolution to call for a referendum. There must be a vote by the public in both the village and the town on whether or not to consolidate, and the resolution or the ballot proposition has to have the usual things: the names of the village and the town, description of the joint entity, its territory, its name, the date of the referendum, the substance of the question to be submitted, and so on and so forth. Then you have a vote. And all you need is a majority of those voting to pass it, and the effective date of consolidation is essentially when the vote occurs.
And Ken, before you go forward, can I just ask a question? When you say vote and village and town, so we have a village and we have a town. The town is inclusive of the village. So could you define what the vote means?
Well, if you're suggesting that people get 2 votes if they live in the village, I don't think that's the law.
I'm not suggesting anything. I'm asking an expert. That's why I'm asking.
Well, I mean, you have a number of registered voters in the village. You have a number of registered voters in the town. Some of those people who are in the town would maybe in the village, but basically everybody gets 1 vote. You know, if you have somebody registered in, I mean, there shouldn't be duplication, actually. There should be people registered in the village and people registered in the town.
We've never had a single town vote not including the village. I mean, it's totally doable, obviously, because we are.
Well, and if you've always had town votes that include everybody in the village, that's your registration list.
Yes.
And each one of those people get 1 vote.
Okay.
But for purposes of the law, it's broken out this way.
Okay. Thank you.
It's the way the legislature operates.
Thank you.
Does a college also vote on this?
If they qualify as voters, they have to have, there's a residency requirement.
A residency in Newport?
Yeah, yeah. But remember, the entire SUNY campus, if I'm correct, is in the village, right?
Yes.
So that means they're also within the town. So if these college students have lived here long enough and they register and they say this is their home and they live in the dorm, they can vote. Okay? Now we get into the fun thing, step 3. I guess step 2 was the referendum. Step 3 is obtaining the tax credit. This is really the sort of carrot in front of the horse on this thing. The bill that was enacted, signed by the governor just recently, provides that literally all you have to do is vote to consolidate and the money is yours. Now there's a lot of questions about what it is and when you get it and how you get it. But our understanding is it's $1 million a year and it goes on in perpetuity so long as the state legislature appropriates it every year. This legislature is not required to appropriate it, but as long as it has this program, you get $1 million a year. So say the application is not necessary, and the credit is an incentive to actually go through the reorganization of the town and the village into one unit. Okay, this is how it is computed, just so it kind of proves the point. It's equal to 15%, not to exceed the 15% of the effective amount of the real property tax levied by the town and the village, but not to exceed $1 million. And as I say, this annual amount appropriated by the legislature. We actually talked to the Department of State's office, which confirmed that it's paid annually, and if you have been on the program and they're going to cut it down, they would probably continue to pay you for a while. So I think you can comfortably say if you start to get into the program will continue. As I suggested to Susan, if after a couple of years, after consolidation, you are showing additional cost savings, then you should probably go back to the legislature and say, give us $2 million. We've been really good about this, and we should be receiving more incentive aid. This point I think is significant. We got this from the Department of State. Last year, the legislature appropriated $35 million for these tax credits, and they spent less than $3 million, which means there are very few communities taking advantage of this program. I know just a couple actually which have happened. So it's not a popular course of action to take, but for those who take it, there is a substantial amount of funding available. At least 70% of the $1 million has to go back to the taxpayers, meaning that in preparing your budget, you would take that $70,000 and put it in the revenue side.
700,000.
700,000.
700,000 to put it in the revenue side, so it's taxes that don't have to be levied. So it essentially results in a tax reduction or a reduction in any tax increase, keeping in mind just a 2% tax cap in effect as well.
What would that mean for defaults?
I'm getting to that. That's the next slide. All right, so the tax credit would be paid after April 1 of the year following consolidation. So if you had your vote later on this year or next year, after these resolutions are passed by the two boards, you could actually get the $1 million next year. April 1 is a critical date because that's the state's fiscal year, and they're the ones who are paying the money, so you have to look to the state's fiscal year. So the money's not there now, but the new fiscal year is April 1, 2013, and during that period, really up to March 2014, I guess, probably earlier because they have to put it in the budget, you would get a payment during 2015. Okay.
Wow.
All right, here's how we show the potential tax credit. Now these numbers we took off from official statements that are online for the village and the town, and they're old numbers, but we indicate that this is the budget number for the village and the budget number for the town. Town was old, so we're going to assume, I'm sorry, not the budget, the tax levy. So we're going to assume that those numbers, if anything, are low, but when you add it up, the combined village and town tax levy is about $10 million. It's probably higher than that. 15% of that is $1,449,000, and that qualifies you to get $1 million, which is the cap. So unless you start to drastically reduce the property tax levy, the $1 million a year would be paid to you every year. And as I said, the estimated amount for general purposes is 300, and the amount returned to the taxpayers is 700.
When you say every year, it's nice to say it, but, I mean, is that 5 years, is it 10 years?
In perpetuity.
If they-
Unless the legislature does
As long
not.
as it's funded.
Unless the legislature does not put it in the budget. And my guess would be that as more communities in the state go into fiscal distress, which is going on right now, the ones who take the steps that the village and the town are proposing and actually do them are the ones who are going to get this aid, because the way the state looks at it, whether the state's right or wrong, their policy is if we have fewer local governments, there'll just be a whole lot less expense involved. That's the state's view. Okay. Whether it's right or wrong, whether it actually happens or not, it's not the issue. If you consolidate, even if your expenses go up, you still get $1 million a year. My own view is, once it starts, it would be very, very difficult politically for them to turn it off unless the state itself got into such difficult straits that they couldn't pay it. The state's got like a $14 billion, $10 or $12 billion budget. So $35 million is a drop in the bucket. Yes.
Does the tax credit have to be spread equally among all the taxpayers, or can it be to a targeted group?
The answer to that is it's not clear, but if it follows other kinds of rules dealing with assessments and taxes, if you had a tax levy of $10 million and you got $700 million as a credit, you would, on a proportional basis, allocate that $700,000 back to that tax levy.
Well, the issue specifically is there's been talk about with consolidation, town taxes might increase and village taxes decrease. And so could that money be used to mitigate the increases in the town portion?
The answer to that is probably yes, but keep in mind the statute is vague in the sense that it says it has to be paid back to the taxpayers, and it doesn't tell you if it goes back to just village and town taxpayers or if it goes back to just town taxpayers. That might be something that the combined board would have to make a determination as to how that's done. What we estimated based upon a $700,000 reduction in combined levy tax would be a 7 to 10% reduction in taxes, which is significant. But that's the first year. If the taxes go up year after year, then that percentage of savings would go down, but you'd still be getting $1 million a year. That is not chump change. Okay? And each tax bill has to have a statement on it that your property tax savings is X dollars based upon this credit. So every time you pay taxes, you're thanking the governor, and your state senator, and state representative, you're being reminded how wonderful they are. Go ahead. Okay, this is the, we're going to go to the end here.
Okay, does anybody have any other questions on the tax credit or any of that before we move on?
I think this point that Ken raised is very important, because when the study that was done and they just smushed the two budgets together,
Right.
it showed because you're not going to have a village tax anymore, that the village tax went way down and the towns went up because
Right.
they were absorbing what had formerly been the village. So if the new entity has the right to allocate that to the people who live in the town outside of the village, that might make a lot of those people more in support of this than if they couldn't do it.
Well, let me make this suggestion. Your next step is to put together this agreement and lay out what this new entity is going to look like, and then have joint resolutions passed by the village and the town. That's really kind of what we've been hired to help you do, okay? And there's a lot of legal work in terms of structure. Then you're going to have hearings on it. So that's precisely the kind of issue that you ought to iron out before you have the vote. And get consensus on it.
But I think it would be logical to say if you take both budgets, put them together, then take $1 million and reduce property taxes, everybody's gonna feel the benefit of the property taxes reduction. So what would happen is inherently, the town tax is gonna go down, and maybe the villages go down even more, but everybody's taxes are gonna go down because you're applying $1 million of revenue coming in to a joint budget. So it automatically reduces everybody's taxes. The thing we'd have to do, and we'll do that through our studies, is how much it reduces the town and how much it reduces the village. But everybody is ultimately going to get a net tax savings because we're getting $1 million of revenue that's coming from the state.
You have to run the numbers on that because,
Yeah.
because you are absorbing the
Sure.
former village
Sure.
budget into this overall
Right.
picture. And
That's
I,
right.
I hope that's right. I
But,
really do.
but keep in mind, it's not the whole, the tax is not applied to the budget, it's applied to the tax levy. It's a different thing. So it's a direct, it's a credit. It's a credit against what that tax is. So whether it's, you know, more for people who pay both village and town tax, and less for people who just pay town tax, that's a question for you guys to figure out. And it's probably an important issue to get working on now. Yes, ma'am?
Well, I just want to clarify something. The recommendations from the study committee to the two.
You know what, if I could do, if you could just give Sally, because I don't think the TV could hear, so if you could,
Thank you, Susan. The recommendation to the two boards was that the town would be tax increase harmless. In other words, it would be a zero increase. It could go down for everybody, but we would hold the line at a zero increase because of that concept of smashing two budgets together and the town going up 6%. So the village and town boards are committed by their own action to make sure that nobody is getting a tax increase.
Yes, sir.
Why is the surviving entity called a village rather than a town?
Actually, it's called a town.
well, no, it's a townwide village.
Is it a townwide village?
It's a townwide village.
You can call it anything you want. What would you like to call it?
No, I didn't know if there was any state rules in terms of.
Well,
difference
there are
between
two other,
town and
there
village.
are two other coterminous villages, Harrison and Mount Kisco. And I don't know what they call
And
them.
Scarsdale, which is.
And Scarsdale, excuse me, and Scarsdale. And I always refer to the village of Mount Kisco, the village of Scarsdale, and the town of Harrison. You know, but the name of the entity is not important. Yes, sir.
As I understand it, when you choose this coterminous government, you must choose to either act primarily as a village or primarily as a town, even though you're gonna do both functions. So, and the
Which would
study
you,
recommended.
which would you like?
Well, the
We
study
recommend
recommended
both.
primarily as a village.
Why is that?
Well, I can, there's a lot of reasons. One of them is because they have nonpartisan elections, because they have a separate fiscal officer who's, you know, not the chief executive officer in the village, and there were other reasons given, but that's two.
One of the main reasons was the village is allowed to have a volunteer fire department. The town has to have a fire district. So if you're trying to do coterminous and reduce government by having to create a fire district, you're actually creating
You're
another.
telling me the village has a non-paid fire department?
Yep.
Boy, how do they pay for all those fire engines and stuff we've been bonding?
We,
Who pays for that?
the
The
town and the
taxpayers.
village
That's
pay for
ridiculous.
it.
Well, look, I mean, I'm a law professor as well as a practicing lawyer, so I ask students questions, so forgive me if I'm getting arrogant. But I was trying to tweeze out an answer. The answer would be a village, but the reason is because it's the center of an urban area that's got a surrounding area around it that's supported by this urban area called the village. So it makes more sense that it actually operates like a small city, which is the definition of the village. I mean, it clearly is not a town in the classic sense of a town in New York, which is a bunch of farms and a couple of hamlets along the road. That it is not. It's an urban
We're
center.
not that.
Anything else? Everybody understand this? There'll be a quiz. Okay.
Got to report again that we get $1 million in perpetuity.
Right, we'll have a quiz on that. You know, just that, I know that $1 million is an issue of concern to everybody, but I can't emphasize enough as a practicing lawyer who's done this a long time, the importance that you actually got this bill passed. I mean, we have clients tell us, oh, we're going to get this legislation passed, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then nothing happens. You know, we actually got, you actually got this legislation passed, signed by the governor, and you went up and beat on Bonasek and Cahill to get it done. And that's remembered by those people, and what's remembered is that you won't sit around and let them roll over you. So as long as you stay on top of those guys and remind them every year that they owe you $1 million, I think you'll get it. But it's like everything else, you have to stay on top of it. Susan's good at that, right?
Oh, yeah.
And Sally, and Stuart, and a lot of other people sitting in this audience.
Okay. Now, this issue about acquiring school district property came up sort of late in the day over the last couple of months in discussions with Susan. And when she asked me to do this, I said, let me throw in the school district acquisition, property acquisition as well, because even though Susan has told you that it's not part of the consolidation, and that's actually right, in my view, if I were advising you as citizens of this community, I would say view it as part of the reshaping of the government of the community, because it has a really major, important, positive fiscal effect if you were to do it right. And let me just give you a little bit of the law here. The education law allows the Board of Education of the school district to sell its property to another public corporation for nothing. A lot of people have said, well, we had a $15 million bond proposition that went down. There's no cost to having the school district dispose of its property to another public corporation. And that's because the law recognizes that school districts are, to some extent, strange animals, in that when the population is increasing and the school population is increasing and times are good, boy, they're out with building projects all over the place. It's good economic development, lots of construction jobs, yada, yada, yada. And then something happens to the economy. People move out, populations get older, school populations decline, and there are a lot of school buildings sitting around boarded up. This is going on right now, but it's not the first time. I've been doing this a long time. There was another phase back in the 70s and 80s when the schools were trying to get rid of their buildings. If you go to the town of Southampton, it's this magnificent brick building. It's the old Southampton High School district, high school building. If you go to the village of Tuckahoe, beautiful brick building, which is the village hall, former school building. So you can look around the state and find these really great-looking Georgian Federalist-style brick buildings that are town and village, sometimes city hall offices. They're former schools. They've been what we call repurposed. Repurposing public buildings is a big thing these days because there is an economic decline, there is an excess of public facilities, and to be able to reuse them rather than let them go fallow or tear them down is really a very positive thing to do. So the law says that the school building can be given, in effect, to the town or to the village. Requires voter approval, but it can be done, as I say, without consideration. The property has to be used for public use, so you can't put a casino in there. That wouldn't work unless you go into the casino business. It's a possibility, I suppose. But you need to use it for a public purpose. And you can't resell the facility to a private owner because that would defeat the whole concept of giving it to another public corporation.
Question?
Yeah.
Does under the definition of public purpose, does that include potential partial use by nonprofit organizations?
Yes, it does. I'll get to some of that a little later. Next slide. Go ahead. One of the things we would suggest that you consider is, rather than give it to the village or the town, that the three entities, the town, the village, and the school district, form something we call a local development corporation. Does everybody know what a local development corporation is? The guys in government. Good for you. Essentially, it's a not-for-profit corporation that acts on behalf of a public corporation, the town, village, city, or county. And its reason, its public purpose reason, is to lessen the burdens of government. Now, I was at a meeting this morning where two state controller, deputy state controller and council were there. They were talking about these LDCs, and they don't like them because they think they're abusive of the local finance law and so on and so forth. But our view is that they really are subsidiaries of governments to do financing and operation and own facilities for the benefit of a municipal corporation to carry out its purposes, like a mature town. So if the LDC were formed and the stakeholders were the village, the town, and the school district, then that entity could go out and borrow without any vote, like the school district has to, without any debt limits, like the town or the village has to. And it would be done in sort of a market-based financing, what could be afforded and what would it cost to actually make that building usable for public purposes. And then when you get to the public uses, it gets kind of interesting. I mean, it's a middle school, as I recall. It has a gym, it has an auditorium, it has a cafeteria. So think what you could do with that. You could have village offices, town offices, or whatever you are. The new thing, you have their offices. You could have school offices. You could have the arts center there, so they could have shows. You could have a senior citizen center there. You could use the cafeteria for certain purposes. You could have a wellness and recreation center at the gym. I mean, essentially, it's a large enough facility for this community, and it's right downtown. But the police department there, maybe your new fire department could go there. I mean, it is an interesting central location, which is anchored right in the downtown of the new entity, and it probably wouldn't be that expensive to fix up for those purposes. Now, I haven't done any, this is just an idea, it's not an idea, but I understand the voters turned down a $50 million renovation, which is pretty, gold-plated, to be perfectly honest about it. But typical buildings like that, when they're repurposed to be used for offices and so forth, if it took $10 to $15 million, that would be a lot. And it wouldn't necessarily come out of your pockets, because in the process of moving all these offices to one central location, other facilities that you currently use for those purposes, such as this building, the village hall, you have a separate community center, space that you rent, all that stuff, those costs go away. All those assets can then be sold to the private sector and put back on the tax rolls. Now, we could play around with numbers all night, but in my head, I'm thinking that anywhere from a quarter to a third of the cost of fixing up that old school building probably could be paid for by selling assets that are no longer needed to carry out a public purpose, because you consolidate it, you put everybody in one center. That's a significant cost savings. Plus, those assets go back on the tax roll and are added to your tax base for which you can levy taxes. I mean, that's the kind of thing I could write a really spiffy article for a law journal about, and it would get widely read. And it's really an opportunity that's sitting right here for you to do. And I'm not advocating, I'm just telling you that looking at the facts, what I know, and looking at what other clients do and what's going on around the country, you're sitting with an interesting set of facts that if you put them all together correctly, you'll have a more vibrant urban community and you'll have lower costs to keep it going. And the next thing that happens, once taxes go down, and once you have a nice place where everybody comes for the government, the police, the fire, the community center, the arts, and so forth, now you start attracting private sector businesses, and the community starts to grow. And all the other attractions you have nearby here, start to increase. At the end of the day, the only thing that's going to fix up the economy is jobs and commitment of the private sector to spend money. Next slide. And that's the story. Any questions? Yes?
That all sounds well and good, and I can see a lot of potential in that idea. But a lot of these repurposing buildings are for buildings you don't need anymore. The problem is then we're out of middle school, and taxpayers, with their other hat on, are gonna have to build middle school someplace, and then that's gonna offset the savings, because now we're gonna have to build a new school, because we need a middle school. It's not that we're losing students, we still have the students, and they have to be somewhere.
And everything, I thought they had an extra building they could get rid of.
No.
No, you have to
Oh,
build.
well, no, they have to decide if they're gonna go down to 2 buildings, 3 buildings, and figure out what they have to do. But they would at some point have to move the kids.
Okay, but they would need to build a new school building?
Or addition.
In addition,
An addition is a big difference between an addition and a new building. Addition is pennies, new building is lots of dollars. So if there is a way for them to accommodate the middle school in another building, which is appropriate for having various ages of kids together in one facility, then, that's the end. If you're right, then they would have to build a new school building. Everything I just said goes out the window with respect to that.
but if an addition is,
An addition is it's another $10 or $15 million thing. It's not a big deal.
Although, Ken, that is a big deal when you're discussing that the majority of the tax burden is on the homeowners. We don't have a lot of industry, so it would have to be an addition to accommodate the students from the middle school. They don't currently have the inventory of space for students.
Well, that's a problem. If they have to, put if they have to build a new building, I would say this doesn't work. If
Then,
they-
and I apologize, I'm gonna make you think on the spot also, the building they're currently in is in need of renovations, hence the $50 million bond.
Yeah.
So, one way or the other, and all of us here being part of it, the taxpayers have to at some point spend money on renovating the school to bring it up to
Right.
New York State education standards or repurposing it. How do you decide where to best spend those dollars?
That's what the Board of Education is there to do, is to make those decisions. And, what they should look at, if they have a building where they can add it, make an additions, or build a new facility on land they already own, there's a cost to that. $50 million to renovate a single building sounds like a lot of money to me. I mean, for $50 million, you could probably build a new building. So, I would say the net cost savings, off the top of my head, would probably still make sense if they were to convert the middle school into the sort of community government building. But the answer to that is getting a lot of estimates and running numbers. I mean, the idea is good, but the only way you're going to know is to talk to architects and planners and get some numbers. And once those numbers are in, then you can make a decision. Yeah.
Ken, in your slide back at the beginning, you talked about the education law. It says with or without consideration.
Right.
So you could actually have the LDC pay the school district consideration for that building, which they could then use to offset what the taxpayer cost might be for a future building or addition.
That's right.
And then spread that cost
That's right.
over the whole community on a long-term basis.
Right. There is clearly not an issue, legally speaking, of an LDC taking the building and doing everything I said to create a building. To use the LDC as a financing tool to build new school construction, you might have to have a bit of a discussion with the State Department of Education, because the commissioner has frowned upon these kinds of off-the-books financings for
Well, it's
school
not that, you
buildings.
have to pay for the building.
Right.
So the LDC would pay the school district for the building. And that consideration then would be used.
That actually would work. If they paid them for the building, they use numbers, they gave them $10 million, and the school district has $10 million, they can just go take the cash and pay to have an addition put out of a building, and then they get state aid for it as well.
They would get state aid, and that 10 million would be used to offset the taxpayer portion, the remaining portion.
Yes, yeah, there would be no taxpayer portion, there would be no debt. It would be debt of the LDC, which is, as you say, spread among, within the community of the, and that community could be large. It could be the school district and the town village.
And we've also talked about.
And by the way, that's not a taxpayer expense. The payments that are made to the LDC would just be budget appropriation.
This discussion is really interesting to me, and we as governments are also trying to raise the revenue line in other ways too, by maybe forming special districts and other things that will assist us in doing things like this in the future as well.
That's true, sure.
Can an LDC bond for a value that's greater than the asset it has?
Technically, yes. They do not have the same constraints as the, you would have under local finance law. But keep in mind that you want your financing by the LDC to be tax exempt, the interest, so that you keep the cost down. And there are tax rules that will prohibit you from doing too much of that. You can do a little of that, but not too much of it, because then that cost that's not going into a capital project is deemed to be working capital, and that you can't finance.
Well, the scenario might be, tell me if this makes any sense, where the LDC funds in an amount that would both cover the renovations and provide compensation to the school system sufficient for them to make a significant dent in building a new school. And the value of the, let's say, potential rent from the local governments coming in and other organizations using the facility would be considered part of the asset in addition to the building itself. Is that a scenario that could work?
Yeah, I mean, essentially what the LDC can finance are capital items, same as a local government would. So in your scenario, there's sort of two issues. There is a payment to the school district for the building, which they can then use to build a new one. Then there's the payment to renovate the building that you're buying, and so those are the two lumps of money. That's the debt of the LDC. The LDC's payments would come out of appropriations from the budgets of the two entities, the town, village, and the school district.
But Ken, if this was taken on just by the town, the school was out of it, the town could also generate revenue opportunities by leasing portions of the
That's
building.
right. Well, yes and no. In order for the bonds to be tax exempt, you have to be careful not to have what's called excess business use. It's basically a 10%.
But if it's
So what's
nonprofit
the-
or other governments.
What's the rule of thumb, Ken? It's 70-30, 80-20?
It's 10%.
10%?
And it's not a rule of thumb, it's a part of the tax law. So you've got 10% bad money revenue is what we call it. It's going to be unintended business use. Not-for-profits unfortunately count toward that.
Okay, so you could use that money to
Now,
offset.
you can bifurcate the building. You can say this much of the building we're going to rent out, and we're going to treat those as a taxable debt, and this much we're going to use for government buildings. And then, again, run the numbers. The taxable portion probably isn't that expensive. The rent would offset the increase in the borrowing cost because it's taxable. So you'd want to do it that way. That's good.
Ken,
Yeah.
question in regards to, since the school district is a larger area than our town village, they would have to sell or convey, or whoever's paying for it, they'd have to do fair market value, I would assume.
No.
So they could.
No. 405 of the education law says may convey to a public corporation with or without consideration. So the concept of selling it in the market at fair market value or as surplus property is a different law. If they sell it to another public corporation, they can basically give it away. Takes a vote, but they can give it
So
away.
you could have a school district vote where the majority of the people voting are New Paltz residents, basically saying, yes, we want to give this free property over to the town of New Paltz, but people live in East Opus and Gardner who pay taxes and technically own that building, they can get voted out. They can get undercut financially.
Correct. It's a vote by the school district.
If it's a vote by the school district, they're not getting
Then,
voted
yeah.
out because they have the ability to
Well, a
vote.
person in Gardner will be giving out their property to the town.
But-
Well,
but
they have
yeah.
the right to vote. They're not disenfranchised just because the building's
Well,
gone.
but here's why they wouldn't. Here's why they would vote for it. They're giving up an old building they're going to have to spend, somebody thinks $50 million to fix. They're getting, in my example, $10 million to go put an addition to a school. And so, I mean, that's the consideration. Yeah. Joe?
And then, of course, on top of it, all the school district kids use our facilities. I mean, they use our youth center, they use our, you know, they're part of our sports teams. They, you know,
I'm
so
not
I mean.
against it, I
Oh,
just
no, no,
like
I'm just,
that back here.
no, I'm just saying in a sense though, I mean, if you really think of New Paltz as being the central community, and if this idea potentially ends up reducing the ability to have to bond, increasing, you know, our taxes, gives a newer facility for everybody to use, which they all use, and then it gives the ability to build an addition, you know, that's newer at less cost, everybody at the end of the day still ends up netting out benefiting. Otherwise, you don't do it.
The reason I've added the school building portion to the discussion about coterminous consolidation is because if there's anything that I think is important in the 21st century for local government in this country is that they work together as a team, not operate in silos. I mean, I can think of a lot of clients where I represent the school district, they don't talk to the village, and vice versa. That's just not going to work anymore. We don't have an economy that affords you the luxury of being operating like that. These governments have to work as regional teams, and you have a really good set of facts here to do that.
Ray, you have a-
Well, I was just
Oh,
going
Carol.
to say to our question before,
Okay.
about the school district being different from the town and village.
Mhm.
That answers the question.
Ken,
There
Yeah.
will, and there will have to be some
With the mic.
investigation. I believe, and this is a long time in my memory, but I think if this idea is to be pursued, there will have to be a very, very clear title search, because I believe the land was given for the purposes of a school. So it was a gift. The property that the middle school is on is a gift.
I think to answer your question, Sally, that statement's been made for a while, and if it is true, the purpose really wouldn't change for what it was given for. It was given for recreational use, and that would continue because the town would
Right.
continue
Well,
to use
let
the.
me tell you where you're going with this. There's a rule that if you are selling what's deemed to be parkland, and that's well known by the state, then to alienate parkland for another purpose, including putting a public building on it, requires an act of the legislature. And we've gone through that exercise, but you've got your legislators in your pocket now. That'll just take a couple of days.
Ken, we're not talking, see, what Sally was saying is when the school district acquired that property, some of it was given to the school district with a caveat that they use it for recreational purposes.
Well, the fields, the fields,
All right, that's a
the
different-
fields, the
The
fields,
field
the
is
fields have to
back.
stay as,
That won't
the fields,
change.
that would never change.
Well, that's a different issue. If that was a gift to the school district by Mr. Paltz, you know, the rich guy who owned all the land here, right? And he said, in the gift, you may have this in perpetuity so long as you use it for a school,
Recreation.
or, well, we don't know what it says.
Well, that's what
We have to look at what the donation, what the gift says. If the gift is very narrow and it says it will only be a school, that will also require going to the legislature to get that fixed. If it says for recreational purposes or governmental purposes or for the public good or something fairly broad, then you'd have a problem. But if it was a donation, that restriction will be part of the title of the land. And so Sally is right. You'd have to search the title, and then you'd have to break that covenant through legislation.
And I'm sorry, you know, it's a great conversation we're having here about just one part of this Ken's piece. So I guess unless anyone's anything else on that piece of it, I'd like Ken to move forward a little bit. And
I'm done.
great. Just the one big piece I have is there hasn't been a lot of consolidations in New York State so far, and there's everything from towns and villages all the way up to counties looking at it. What is our next best step?
Well, your next step is to follow the statute. You have a plan. You have an adopted. I think both boards have adopted this plan, right? I mean,
Well, in essence, we adopted the study.
report.
We studied the report,
Right.
now we're taking it to the next
Now
step.
you have to
Study it.
both boards have to adopt.
Well, we're studying different aspects. We've got to put together the budget. We have to put together what this new government would look like. Then if the two boards agree that this is a good idea to bring to the voters, we would then vote to put it up for referendum.
No, but what you step is both boards have to pass a resolution
Right.
that has an agreement among the two entities that lays all this stuff out. I mean,
Right.
that's what we're here to help you to do,
Right.
okay? That's what you're gonna pay us the big bucks for, right? Okay.
So we're not there yet. 'Cause
Well,
we're
now you
doing
can
these-
start any moment.
But we are started, but we're doing our committees, and we're bringing it all back to the table in November. So we're not there yet.
Oh, no, nobody said we were there yet.
Right.
No, the point is that
But
we're
I-
doing the work to
Right.
get to the point of making a
Exactly.
decision.
Exactly.
I mean, just, my, from this discussion tonight, you've already raised 3 or 4 important issues, you know, so those are things that the committees ought to be working on. Then there'll be a bunch of other issues, and I mean, this all needs to get solved by committees. Recommendations need to go to the board have to pass them, draft the agreement, put it on the ballot.
Before
That's
April
what it-
1st.
Huh?
Before April 1st.
No, it really before, I mean, if you want the money in 2013, well, yes, actually before April 1st, because you want to make sure you're in the state's budget.
Right.
That's kind of the thing. And it can be done in a special election, it doesn't have to be in a general election. But I mean, you're really sort of, you know, you're at the starting gate, done the study, done all the stuff you need to do, you kind of thrash this out. You're at the starting gate to actually formally put this together.
Now, Susan, did the transaction that occurred in Kingston, did they get grant money for that as well?
You're talking about the STRIVE program? The way I understand it with the STRIVE program is that the school district decided they weren't going to use the elementary school anymore. And so what the county executive did was he decided to take the community college and move it into there, take them out of the BRC. They have satellite offices up in Kingston. So take the community college out of the BRC, move it into this school, take Veterans Affairs, which was in a different building, move them into the BRC, putting the building where the veterans were back on the tax rolls. And then basically, because part of the college was moving into the school, he was able to get money from the SUNY construction fund, I guess, close to I think $1 million or so. I have it up there. Then he got the Dyson Foundation to give $500,000. Then he got Governor Cuomo to give the rest of the money. So this whole transaction of taking over the school, renovating the school, putting the Veterans Center up there, putting that back on the tax rolls, is all being done at no cost to the taxpayers because they put the pieces together.
So we
And
would-
no, it's no cost to the local taxpayers.
We would explore the option of trying to get other money to subsidize this whole thing.
Well, one of the
Beyond
things,
what we're talking about.
well, I'm having conversations with the executive from the perspective of he created this Thrive program as a model to be replicated statewide. He's been on statewide television talking about it. He wants it to be a model. And so the conversations I've been having with him is how could we potentially bring what he did in Kingston to New Paltz to help us get everybody else's money to solve our problems.
Well, it's always best to use other people's money. That's an objective. we
We're
all
totally
have.
against using our own money.
Good policy, use other people's money. But, you know, there are grant programs and stuff like that. But I mean, all of these things where you're gonna have new facilities will have some cost to the taxpayers. And the issue is how much is it gonna be and is the end result gonna be worth it? And, you know, you need to put proposals together which are reliable and which can be bench tested and, you know, well understood by everybody. But I wanna go back to your question, which is a good one, which is why haven't there been a lot of these things go on? There's been a significant one, you know, the village of Seneca Falls gave up ghosts, became part of town of Seneca Falls. Incidentally, the easiest way to do a combination of a village and town is for the village to go out of business. And that apparently is just, we wouldn't want them to do that because they're our client, you know, so we want the village to stay around for another 500 years, right? And there is, and in cases where villages have gone out of business, they usually don't do very much. Their population is depleted, and they really don't have a good reason to exist anymore. They're just kind of spinning their wheels. That's not true in New Paltz. You have a vibrant village. It's the center of the SUNY campus. So your coterminous combination makes a lot of sense. But other kinds of combinations which require the votes of the two entities or more entities that are coming together are resisted because people hate change. And people fear that there's going to be an increase in cost and that somehow they're going to lose their local touch with the government. somehow their taxes are gonna go up, somehow something bad's gonna happen, okay? And the only way you deal with that issue is you just completely vet all the issues, you bench test them, you make sure they're right, and you make sure that everybody knows about them, and you get consensus. And that's hard to do, but as I said earlier, if you know, the future of successful local government in New York and the United States is by local governments coming together as a team and working for a common interest for their citizens.
Just talking very quickly about Seneca Falls, that was a mess because what happened was the town, as I understand it, was getting a lot of money from their landfill, and they were getting a lot of money, and the village wasn't getting any of it. And so the village wanted to partake in all the money that the town was getting to reduce their taxes, so they just dissolved. And because they didn't go through the kind of studying that we're going through to really understand it before we bring it forward, they just dissolved the village without the town having had any time to basically understand what they were going to do with now the village, you know, with the village. And it's an absolute mess because they didn't take the time to do the work, to study, to understand it.
Well, there's two about the point. In a dissolution, the town doesn't really have anything to do with it. The village just says, we're done, we're closing up, see you later, we're not part of the town, you take care of it. In a combination, both sides have to have a say in it, so there's got to be a consensus between, in this case, the town and the village. But here's another thing to keep in mind. You've studied this thing to death. You've got this report. If you keep studying this thing, you know, some other thing's going to happen, and this will lose traction, and it will go away. I mean, my own advice, because I represent both communities, is give yourself a timetable to get that board resolution passed. And stick to that timetable and get the people you need to do it, and don't let that timetable slip. Because if you just keep studying it and having lots of coffee clutches and hearings and yada, 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 the thing will just disappear into the ether. I mean, have to do it all over again 10 years from now.
Can I ask you?
Thank you.
No, I have a question.
But Jean has a-
LDC.
Yeah.
Okay, so just for clarification, it's a nonprofit that acts on behalf of what we would assume would be the village, town, and the school district. Okay. But if I understood, so I need you to clarify, they kind of get to operate like a private sector business with the exception of following the tax laws of a 501c.
That's pretty good. Well, they're not 501c3.
But they're not.
You ready to work? We got a job for you. That's pretty good, Jane.
Thank you.
She's spent a lot of time with me. This is why she doesn't know. The LDC is a hybrid. It's a not-for-profit corporation. So it has broader powers than a local government does. But it's a special not-for-profit corporation that acts on behalf of a local government, both for tax purposes and under state law purposes, with the purpose of lessening the burdens of government, which is a very broad term that can be applied in a lot of different ways. But it has stakeholders. Its stakeholders
Right.
are the communities who have members on its board. It has bylaws, it has an articles of incorporation. You know, we form these things all the time. And they're
It sounds to me like the forming of an LDC kind of releases some of the restrictions that the village, the town, and the
It
school
releases
district
a
are
lot of
bound to.
restrictions.
Okay.
But
which would be why.
what you
Okay.
do is you substitute a lot of strict rules that are written into the statutes so that public officers don't go out and abuse the taxpayers'
Right,
dollars.
exactly.
It restricts those, but it has those same people on the boards and have oversight of the LDC, so it's transparent to the public.
Okay.
I mean, they can get screwed up, but ours all do fine.
Of course.
And yours will be fine.
Is there an example of an LDC operating in New York State now?
Absolutely.
Is there a clean LDC
I apologize.
operating in New York State?
Yes, is there an example we could look at and say, this is an LDC?
I will send you an email. You call it Mark Thielking, who is a former banker who runs something called Energy Improvement Corporation, which is an LDC subsidiary of the town of Bedford. And they are about to launch a loan program to provide low interest rate loans to commercial facilities in the town of Bedford and about 6 other communities in Westchester County who want to put energy efficiency equipment in, that'd be rooms, doors, heating, yada, 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 yada. And we haven't done the first deal yet, but we've got sign-offs by state agencies. IRS rules, very favorable IRS rules just came out on this. They're negotiating to get some special tax credits from Westchester County, which have an allocation, and that's an example of an excellent local development corporation is acting as a subsidiary of the town of Bedford, and ultimately for other towns. We have articles and bylaws that provide for various communities becoming members and having representation on the board, so on and so forth.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So-
just as an example though, but, and I apologize.
No, go ahead. No, go.
But if you take like Westchester or town of Bedford, you're looking at an average income plus $150,000, $200,000. So
Now, a lot of those guys are out of work. They used to work on
They-
all. You hope they accumulated enough money so that their investment earnings are that.
you were right. They have gone from 250,000.
The reason these guys have all this time to work on this stuff is they haven't got a day job anymore.
They certainly have probably. You're looking at a community here. You look at New Paltz, averaging the family income is around say 50,000. So you're looking at communities. Like that's a good example of an LDC built in a community that has about 2 to 3 times.
So what do you care? Because you're using an LDC for another purpose.
Well, because I'm trying to build a community with a very similar budget. So I care because the funds they're using are going to build a government that's going to cost about my government within a horseshoe. So that's why I care. In other words,
But they're totally different purposes. You asked for an example of a successful LDC.
Right.
That's one that we're working on. right now.
with successful funding that has like our community.
This is the only combination like this we're working on right now. I'm
Okay.
not aware there's even another one going on in this state. It's this
Okay,
far along.
I'm good with that too.
And as I said, the reason, for many, I could send you things I wrote literally 20 years ago on this topic about this is the recession of the early 90s. This is when, the economy went to hell and Bush got beat by Clinton. Remember that? Some of you that? You're too young. I mean, he's nodding his head like
Be nice to him, he's the reporter.
Is he? Just being agreeable, right?
Now, it's funny though, Ken, that you mentioned that because I could send you articles that 2 people sitting here actually worked with my father on back in the 70s.
Well,
When they were in their teens,
here's my,
but we've been discussing consolidated. So I'm trying to see where are we, and I started the question originally with, it comes down to an elephant is a horse designed by committee. So we have all these committees going on. Our next step, it seems to me, we need to end here.
There's 2 questions. The one is, why haven't there been a lot? You have to go back to this issue was recognized at least 20 years ago, and they've been kicking the can down the road, and nobody wants to make a change because nobody wants to make a change. They like the status quo. Everybody likes their high school. Everybody likes their own local police and so on. The economics, we don't have another, since 2000, since 20 years, within the last 20 years, we've had a .com boom and a real estate boom. There ain't another boom coming, I don't think. If there is, let me know and I'll go buy some stock tomorrow. What's the next boom, please?
I don't think you have to go too far to find an LDC. You have 2 former directors of the City of Newburgh Economic Development Corporation who are taxpayers in the town of Paltz. The Kingston Newburgh Enterprise Corporation, which is now shut down because they've gone through the procedure for something which was started by funding obtained by Congressman Finch years ago. I mean, they're around if you choose to want to use that.
But
Conduit. I mean, it's not unusual.
The problem has been that Industrial Development Agency, which has been around for a long time, some developer comes in and he pays off a member of the municipality governing board, and they make some kind of deal, or somebody on the board has a friend who has a piece of property or sold to the developer, nobody knows about it. The next thing you know, the friggin' FBI is there. I think about this because you mentioned my former client, Newberg. Okay? I mean, that is not, I mean, we represented them for years and years and years, all this crap was going on, we never knew about it, you know? So the way you do this is you do it up front. It is transparent, every citizen gets to look at it, it's in the press, you're not hiding anything. And if you operate really any other way, you're gonna be in deep doo-doo and they'll throw you out as a client.
Does anybody have any questions, or? Okay, well, Ken, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, before Ken leaves, and then we'll take like a 3-minute break so he could leave, we could say goodbye, and then we'll get into the meeting. Just a few things I want to say. I know that Ken gave me a lot of credit for the legislation that just got passed, but I have to acknowledge Sally Rhodes and Jerry Benjamin and how instrumental they were, and even the mayor, in terms of getting this legislation passed. And I also just want to say that Deputy Mayor Sally Rhodes, Ross Pollock, and I went up to the Department of State, was it yesterday? Wow, it seems so long ago.
I know.
We went up yesterday to meet with the Department of State to talk about the consolidation, about next steps, to understand the tax credit. And it was very interesting because we were trying to get this meeting for a while, and they actually were waiting to see if the governor signed the bill to have the meeting. And we went up there, and they actually had said to us, they asked about the fire department. We said we had one fire department. They asked about the police department. We said one police department. We had one justice court. And they just looked at us and said, so what's the problem? You're already there and stuff. And I said the elected officials, but that's beside the point. But at the end of the day, they really basically, as we were leaving, said to Sally that they were incredibly impressed about how serious New Paltz was about this undertaking, how much work we've done, how serious we are, and they were very, very impressed. And I think that the Department of State is going to be working with us very closely to try to see how we could look at this, put together a good plan for the community, and hopefully potentially bring a good plan forward. And I think they look at New Paltz as a potential success story and as a potential for us to create a model that can then be replicated throughout the state. And they're very excited about this money being available for us. There's actually money we could apply for immediately in terms of grants to help us even do some of this. And they just, I mean, we met with them from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and we still weren't done talking. So it was a very, very successful meeting, and I think we have the state has our back, and they're really working with us, and that's really exciting. And I just want to also acknowledge Edgar Rodriguez. I don't think I acknowledged you at the beginning from the school board. So we did invite all the school board members to come, and I'd like to thank you, Edgar, for showing up and listening to us, and we'll figure out next steps. And I want to acknowledge Joe Ariel, who's the deputy controller, and Elliot Auerbach asked Joe Ariel, who was the deputy controller, to come down and listen to this conversation also. So to everybody who's here, thank you, Ken. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
You're welcome.
We'll take a 5-minute break so we can wait.
I just like to suggest, because I think.
Sally, take the microphone.
I'll stand up.
Okay.
Ken, I think, very clearly stated, and I agree with him, change is scary. Change is, and the idea of change is scary. And I think there are lots of questions lots of people have. And some of them are very simple, or they think it will be perceived as simple, but it's important to them. So if you have questions, or if you know people who have questions, please email me those questions. We will get the answers. Stuart Glenn is chairing Gail Gower with the community outreach. My email is sallyandrhodes@gmail.com. And please, just send me your questions, because the more questions we can answer, the more information we can give you, the better off for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Sally.
Okay, so we're going to take a 5-minute break so we can say goodbye to Ken, and then we'll get back and we'll get going with the meeting.
Okay.
Nobody? Public comment.
Well, that's next after announcements.
Well, we'll do public comment, then we'll
And
do
then,
announcements.
well,
'cause-
announcements and public.
Yeah.
Before Dave goes.
Okay. Dave, I think he wants you to hear him.
No, I was just going to ask,
Oh.
there were a few months ago that Dave was supposed to come out to the Springtown area
Could you talk louder?
Yeah. Dave was supposed to come out to the Springtown area for for doing elevations on the road, and you guys had authorized him to come
Right.
out for that for like
Right.
$2,000, and that was,
We have to coordinate with the homeowners now because we wanted him to be able to give them elevations at the same time, and I have to sit down with Dave to do that.
okay.
That's
So,
what I
so
would
that's
do.
still moving
That's
forward
still
then?
moving forward.
Okay, I
It
just
has,
had.
it has to do with you going out to Springtown and mapping the elevations and letting the homeowners sort of chime in.
We have to develop a plan for that.
Going to write a letter and
Yeah.
notify the homeowners, right?
That they have an option to have their land elevations done at the same time. That's what we'll do.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect.
Thanks,
great.
Chris.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, no other public comment? Come,
I'd just like to speak briefly on three.
sure, if you could talk just loud and
Yeah,
come on up.
so-
Can you come up so the cameras can, and you can get picked up on the microphone?
So, people have been talking about the consolidation plan and about the middle school plan, and many people are just wondering, has the idea of consolidating the town government into the village hall and its lot been considered? And if not, why not? Because it seems that there's space there to accommodate for more government functions. The police department was working out of the village hall area. The fire department is already there. The justice court is already there. So why hasn't that been considered as an option for consolidating the town structure that we're in now into the village lot? And two unrelated issues that I'd like to touch on also. We've been trying to get bus shelters installed for the loop bus. And it's been about 5 months since the process began. I know that contracts have been written up for local property owners where the shelters will be located, but we're also trying to get a bus shelter situated at the youth center. And there's been a holdup on that front. I know it's something about
I
missing
can answer
pieces.
that, so why don't you go to the third thing?
And the third thing is the chicken law has been passed at the village level, and I hate to be the one to continue to come back before you all on this issue, but you did say that you would wait and see what the village would do, and the village did pass an ordinance. And I don't know if you all read the petition that we presented with the 100 signatures, but if you do go back and read it, you'll see a proposal for a town ordinance, and we'd love for you to consider that. And we're going to be bringing more chicken supporters to the next town board meeting, so we hope that you all follow through with that. So thank you.
Okay, so I'll just very just quickly, actually, just so you do know, the police moved out of that building because it didn't accommodate the police anymore. It was really problematic, and it was studied for a very long time, and that's why they're renting now. The Justice Court is in dire need of lots and lots of work, and they should be moved out of there anyway. But simultaneously, just so you do know, Jason, the mayor, and I did have a conversation because we talked about the middle school, and we also talked, like I said to the mayor, that the town has to make decisions on how we're going to move forward with our facilities, and we can't keep waiting. And so while we're having this discussion about the potential middle school, we have to follow a parallel path, and the mayor and I did touch on if the possibility of going down onto that piece of property and if something like that could work. So conversations are happening. It's just the middle school one right now was something that was put on the agenda, the town took action, and at some point the town will talk about how we want to move forward, and that is a consideration. So conversations are happening. In terms of the bus shelters, we have the shelters, you're right about that. We can't deal with the bus shelters in the village, we can only deal with one in the town. Chris is actually working on getting the one up in the youth center up. Part of the problem was some things with the state and whatever, and the thing I just need to tell Chris right now is what I found out, Chris from Gale Gallery, the head of the Transportation Committee, is that it was decided that it would be on actually the property of the teen center on the other side of the sidewalk, so we don't have to deal with anybody, with any permission from the DOT or anything, and so we could actually put it right on the town hall, on the youth center property. We don't need permission from anybody, and it's also probably safer for the kids, so I was meaning to talk to you about that, to follow up.
It goes a little further than that, because now it has to be handicap accessible, and you're right on top of a gas, fiber optic line, and a water line.
No, but what happens if we're putting, if you have the street, the right-of-way, the sidewalk, and then the grass
That's
up.
where I was told the lines are.
Oh, okay, so we're working on it. We are working on it, and our goal is to get them up as soon as possible. They're lying around, we want them up, and we have been working. I don't know what's happening with the village in terms of the bus shelters that go there.
I know that right now they have contracts written up, but they have not received permission from the property owners yet.
Okay,
That's where
well, so, but we are working on the youth center one and others also. And chickens, well, we'll talk about that at another time, okay?
And just to comment on chickens again, and I don't want to go on chickens, and I'm happy to have people come and talk to the board and not to speak to the board. And if 100 people want to come and speak on chickens, that's great. We have about 6,000 residents of New Paltz, so there's 5,900 that are not going to come and speak about chickens. So the one thing the board did say, not to speak for the board, is we are going to see what the village does and also watch the village law and see what happens in the village with chickens. And I know you had some questions about why are there chickens in R1 districts. If you're more than welcome to do it, come and please and sit with our assessor, and you'll see there's things called existing use. There's actually 3 parts of the law that allow, I believe prior to 1958, 59, before we had zoning in New Paltz, anything that was a pre-existing use, and long as it was continued to have that use, it continues. There is a statute for how much time, top of my head, I will make up the number of a year, directionally I'm correct, it's about a year. So where you go to an R1 district and you find chickens, goats, cows, it's because it's an existing use prior to any zoning in the community. That is the only ones I'm aware of. There are large parts of the town that are farmland that are already zoned for chickens. So they do and are allowed to have them, and either have them or don't. I honestly don't know. I've never done a chicken census in our community. So we will continue to monitor chickens. I did watch the meeting last night and did see that it is passed. But again, it is the very thing that we were just talking about at our last meeting, and Susan made a very valid point, is that there are parts of our community that are very rural, that are now becoming attached to parts of our community that are very residential and densely populated, and we're now just kind of working some of those through. Susan has spent a very large amount of her time on just one of these issues, where you have a very residential community attached to a very rural community. It is not simple. And there are issues, everything from public safety to services attached to that. Chickens are not going to be at the forefront of that. There are, again, what Susan, again, I'm going to reiterate, is she spent a large amount of time, and these are the issues we are now facing, where you have residential communities with dense population attached to a very rural community. Those are where we need to spend our energy and time. And I'm sorry, we will be looking at chickens. It is part of the overall zoning plan, but to do a zoning plan just on one very small part of a very small interest in our community does not serve neither the town nor the village. So please, we do want to hear about it, but there are a lot more things that are going on that we really do need to focus our energy and time and efforts on, and people that are willing to volunteer in this community. And I don't understand where that would be really the best use of all of our times here. But I'm speaking for myself, not for the whole board, so.
Well, we will put chickens on. I mean, I
Yeah.
just will back up my own feeling, and then we really have to move on.
Yeah.
As part of me is sort of like, it might behoove us to watch how the chicken law plays itself
Yes.
out, and how people handle chickens in the village before we sort of move forward and see if there are problems or not problems. And but then again, the board, we can put it on the agenda, talk about it, and we'll figure out where we want to go. But I mean, we haven't even gotten to, we're probably gonna have a special meeting next week, which I'll talk about at the end of the meeting, but I mean, we just got our audit back, we're getting our draft controllers report, we have our budget that we're about to go into, we have some serious stuff that we have to deal with, and this year's budget, I mean, I just was told by the director of Moriello Pool that not enough money was put in for his staff for last year, and now he's run out of his money and stuff, so, I mean, we've got some serious issues to talk about, but it will be on the agenda again. So with that, I'm going to move on. We're going to do announcements. Sure.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Okay. Sorry.
He wants us to do prescribed burns. We haven't
No,
put that
no,
on the
no,
agenda
no,
yet
no,
either.
I promise, I
I'm
promise.
just saying you're
I
ready for
promise.
prescribed
No,
burns
no, I
too.
promise, I promise it's
I know,
not.
he promised he wouldn't bring it up tonight.
No, I just wanted
Let me
to.
write myself a note again, okay? Because I do write it down every time.
Go ahead.
I swear it's not going to be that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank the board for all the work that they're doing with the mess that's from the previous board, financially, and that you guys are really, tackling that, and I really appreciate it. And I know it's a tremendous amount of work, and shuffling that with chickens and prescribed burns and all of the other kind of peripheral things, for me at least, it's important to, to do all of those, but obviously the financial aspect is critical. But what I would like to ask is, I'd like to talk just a second about Pine Road, since that's, something that's come up. The parking around the kind of de facto parking lots that are occurring around the preserve are out of control. They're burdening the community tremendously. All over Butterville, we have parking issues. We have cars that are pulling into lots that, aren't actual parking lots, and then backing out into traffic. So it's not just the Butterville area where, cars are kind of parallel to the streets. There are areas where cars are just backing out into traffic. It's a huge amount of trash problems, and at least my feeling is that, the town should keep Pine Road as a town parking area, and I think that the town should require that the preserve, because there's no reason that the town should be burdened. Our police forces are being burdened, our taxpayers are being burdened by the preserve's lack of basically having a control over their land. There's no reason that our town superintendent, our police, and any of our neighbors should be burdened by the parking problem. The preserve should say, you can't park on our land. It's as simple as that. There's no reason we should put parking signs on Butterville Road. The preserve should, if people are parking on their land, the preserve should say, look, this isn't a designated spot. We're going to call the police are called, and we want them ticketed and towed and moved out of there. There's no reason that the town should be burdened by a non-tax-paying entity. That's my feeling on that. So, I think the preserve needs to step up to the plate before saying, we're going to create, all of these new parking situations. No, take care of the parking issues that you have now. Stop burdening the town with that, and be done with it. And then we can talk about that other stuff.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Bruce.
Okay,
Can I just comment?
one, sure, if we have, very brief, go ahead.
So, just to explain why this issue is important to me and others in the community, and we've heard this before, but there's a sense that issues of sustainability are not being put at the forefront of many discussions in the town, and this issue goes to the heart of sustainability. Can we be a community that can provide its own food sources over the next decade, 2 decades, 50 years? And that's why it's important. So taking that into consideration, I hope that you do look at the village law and realize why it's important for people to have food sovereignty and be able to produce their own food in their own backyards and not have to be reliant on outside sources of food, which are becoming increasingly strained as we see in the Midwest droughts that are causing increases in food prices, and we see overseas they're having huge problems with food supplies, and that's going to eventually come to New Paltz. And the issue of chickens goes to the heart of that, and can we be a sustainable community? So that's just why it's so important for me.
Okay, thanks. Okay, well, we're going to do just a couple of announcements and then get into the agenda so some people can come home. Last week we talked about creating a food aid, and we talked about the hunger in this community. And Kathy Cartagena from Family called today and said that she wanted me to talk to people about the fact that things are so desperate that what's desperately needed is if people can bring peanut butter and tuna fish, quote, protein, to a family of New Paltz, that they would really appreciate that. That what's happening now is there's such a desperation, and they have so much limited protein in terms of peanut butter and tuna fish that they're turning people away, and they're only saving the peanut butter and tuna fish for the kids so the kids could get their proper protein. So she had asked, instead of just cleaning out your cabinets and bringing any cans of food, that if you could specifically inundate family of New Paltz with peanut butter and tuna fish, you'll be really feeding a lot of the people in New Paltz who desperately need it. And so she was asked me to please make that plea to the community, and I think we're a community that will step up to the plate, and I think we'll all be showing up at Family of New Paltz the next couple of days with peanut butter and tuna fish. And with that, I'll just have Laura really come quickly and bring her basket of food. And we are a zero waste community, and we take the zero waste community pilot program that New Paltz is very seriously. And I'm going to let Laura talk real quick about a project at the recycling center and food that's being donated to family.
Yeah, that would be great. Just briefly, as part of the sustainability and zero waste movement in New Paltz, and this stems from some of the early meetings that we had in March, we established just within ourselves, a garden and composting and biofuel committee. So this is actually, it started last year. We had a DAISY group come out and put in some raised beds. The materials were, before they went into the waste stream, they were recovered. So basically it was brought in as garbage and it was repurposed. And then we had some volunteers from the Tweefontein and Clove Valley CSA come in and put down cardboard, use our mulch as a weed barrier, and then they put in these are actually perennials, so they put in mint and oregano, they put in horseradish, sorrel, rhubarb, and they also planted potatoes and tomatoes. So we've been harvesting it. It won't be a lot, but it's part of a demonstration garden just to show the people in New Paltz and who are part of the zero waste movement that you can grow a little bit and hopefully it'll go a long way. So we're going to be taking this to Family of Woodstock. I was hoping they'd be here tonight. And it cost us nothing. And I would like to thank Jens Verpa and Tyler Nichols and Wolf Bravo for volunteering so much of their time to do this.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
I think we should probably, I don't know if these will make it through to tomorrow. Maybe
They
we'll
smell
check some-
incredible.
Do they?
Okay, does anybody have any other announcements before we move
Thank
on?
you.
Anything happening in town, Jeff? No? Okay. Well, shop in New Paltz. So,
Thank you. Yes.
okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to take out of order the Wacko Valley Land Trust stewardship proposal because Christine is here, who is Executive Director of Wacko Valley Land Trust. And what I would like to do is actually ask her to come up and tell us about how exciting of initiative what we're about to undertake and how breakthrough it is in the state of New York, as I understand it from her very own mouth. So,
Yes, we've been working on this
Yeah,
for a
that's
long
fine.
time. This proposal was originally sent in, you can see from the date on this, November 2011. But from recent meetings that we've had, I was expressing to Susan and to others in the Clean Water and Open Space Committee, we're part of a consortium of Hudson Valley and Catskill Land Trusts, and we were talking about what we were doing at the town of New Paltz, and they were blown away. And they're so excited to see how this progresses because they don't have this. All the land trusts, the small land trusts that we conversate with that are in New York, that are outside of New York, that are in states that border this, they don't have anything like this in their towns, and they've been approached by their towns. They're trying to figure out how their towns are working with their conservation easements, so they're really excited to see where we go with this and what happens, and to use this as a model for what they do in the future, and that was exciting to me. We're thrilled to be involved with the town of New Paltz and working with the easements. We think this is very important for the area, for what we could do in the service area of southern Ulster County, but also now thinking about what the implications are on a regional level of how this can be an example for other land trusts and towns in the Hudson Valley, Catskill area. Thought that was very exciting, so wanted to share that with you all. So letting everyone know all the hard work and the meetings and discussions about this has a ripple effect that in a good way.
and I think that's really important is, as we take on these easements, we take on easements, then we turn our back, and then all of a sudden, the easements have encroachments and whatever. If we're going to take the responsibility of conserving open space, then we need to sort of stay on top of it. So the board did authorize, I think it was $5,000 a few meetings ago to basically enter into a contract with the Wacko Valley Land Trust and bring them on in a contract to start doing the monitoring for us. So basically, probably the most important thing, if you just, when you read through this, is in essence what we're saying is we're going to enter into a contract. We're giving the Clean Water Open Space Committee the responsibility, which is in their actual mission, to be the interface with the Wacko Valley Land Trust. The only caveat is that obviously before they expend any money, they have to come back to us for us to approve, the money that they're expending, since you just can't carte blanche give the committee the ability to. Yeah, it does actually,
It
Joe and I
says-
worked on it, and it says it says.
Last paragraph.
Last paragraph says invoices clearly itemizing actions and time spent will be submitted to the town on a monthly basis or as needed.
Is this the only one?
That
they
means
It
that the
says, the very
services-
first sentence, Walker Valley Land Trust will report and take instruction from Clean Water Open Space Commission, provided, however, that all expenditures shall be approved by town
okay,
board.
so the
Yes.
Clean Water and Open Space Commission will be submitting a report to the board saying, we want to authorize the Wallkill Valley Land Trust to
Right,
make
right.
these expenses.
What'll
And
it-
then you'll turn invoices into the town bookkeeper for processing.
Right.
Okay, so you're not putting anything out, but you'll be, okay.
Until we have the full green light, we're not
Okay.
doing anything.
Okay,
So
I
what's
got it.
And we
gonna
haven't
happen-
done anything
I got
since
it.
November
I
2011.
got it.
We've been talking.
So-
I understand, but I wasn't here in
No,
November of
and that-
2011.
right.
So what will happen is, in the meeting that we've had, we've already started to identify, and I think Lynn Boundary did all the work, where she identified all the easements that the town has.
Do you remember how many there were?
What, there were 6, 7?
No, there were,
We have a list.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12.
12 easements.
And she could read them out if you want to know
and
which one.
actually, yeah, and one of the good things is too, is just so everyone understands,
This is
is
from Marty.
a couple of those we actually do have endowments from. It's one thing we've been very poor at, and one, I just want to make sure everyone also recognizes Susan, because I had been the liaison just because of conflicts. Kevin has taken over liaison as CWOSP. Previous administration also would not go to a meeting with CWOSP. I invited Susan to one. She was at that meeting, and then she met during the day with both Jim and with several other members of the CWOSP to make this happen. So I want to thank Susan for doing that. We've been working on this. I know from the Palmatier, we have Palmatier property has an endowment, and we have, I think, 1 or 2 others with endowments. One thing, the Wallkill Valley, and you'll like this, is Wallkill Valley is also going to help us, Gene, with getting endowments and making sure that we have the endowments prior to accepting the land.
So it'll
which
help
we
us calculate the
Right.
endowment.
and calculate the endowments, which is one thing that we knew, so we do need, because we do have funds in here to cover both what we're looking to do, and in the future, we do have a few other lands that we're looking at that we have already been talking about, the endowments. They're going to help us get those, and those will fully fund this.
So before
Okay,
you have
so
final
there-
approval, like any other escrows or endowments, those funds are paid before you get a sign off.
Long before, and also to
Lots of
continue-
process we have to put in place to
Yeah,
make
and
sure
the
we collect.
monitor-
Okay,
and the
so
monitoring of it.
based on what you just said, Susan, is it okay to ask then that, what I'm hearing is that maybe CWOSP does not have a process in place that calculates the amount of endowment, that
Is necessary.
they don't have a mechanism?
Well, they actually do. Where it seems to fall apart is because they don't actually accept the land.
Who accepts the land?
I mean, and I'll step in here. I mean,
Yeah.
CW, Clean Water Open Space Act was developed after some of these easements were in place. So what they're stepping forward is they're taking responsibility for easements that they have put in place since they were created, but also easements that are in place that took place way before they started, that had no endowment put forward.
Right.
And the thing with an easement, it's restrictions forever. You
Right.
need to check that annually. That hasn't been done.
Right.
So what we need to do now is assess where the property is now, and so CWASP is taking that on from this point forward. So it's a little bit of a dance, and that's why we've had to have all these meetings, and that's why it's been so long. And it's something that, you know, the land trust didn't have to be involved in, but it's been a great I've learned so much. It's been a great learning experience.
So what,
So Gene, to answer your question, yeah.
But you know, so it's looking at, as the future moves forward, endowments and coverage for stewardship,
Right.
because easements are forever, and that's a spicy thing. So how to carry that forward with the town in mind? We are absolutely willing to work with the town on that and with CWASP on that, and I give them complete credit for taking on all of the easements and really saying, okay, the town really needs to look at all of these, and it wasn't part of their full charter. I know I was there when Stacy read to them, they're all of the, but they're willing to take all of that on and really assess the whole situation.
So
but
some of them
Jean,
may
Nancy,
be so early that they're like what I would call pre-existing, non-conforming, and we're probably not gonna
We're
get
going
an
to
endowment.
assess everything from this moment forward.
Right, so that would be moving forward, but some of them, I
So
mean,
to answer your
obviously,
question, though, the endowment is interesting because CWASP, Clean Water Open Space, has been very good now of collecting endowments that I'm aware of since I've been there. From the last 2 properties, we've gotten substantial endowments.
Right.
Some of these properties also go through the planning board. Again, the planning board does not have a process, and then Kevin would probably have to do some research to help us, or even our engineer would help us, that the planning board is not fully responsible also for ensuring the endowment was collected.
Okay,
It
but-
really, the buck stops here, to be
but
honest
who
with
is
you.
approving that we accept the easement? Because
Us.
the
Town board.
town board, okay,
Town
so
board.
then if, at
There
that
is not a
point,
process
you have
here.
a third level, and at the point that the easement gets to the town board could say, okay, do we have an endowment in place?
And that was not asked for
Okay.
many, many, many years. So you're absolutely correct.
I'm
So
fully informed now.
I've learned so much. I have learned so much, I have to say.
I'll tell you a couple,
Sarah just
I'll
cut to
I'll
the
tell you a
chase.
couple of things that, one of the things when we started working on this recently, we went back and worked with Stacy and Dave, actually, I think was involved in stuff, to go back and look at every conservation easement that was given, look to see if there were endowments, go to the bookkeeper to sort of say, where is that money? How do we identify that money? And how do we start to use that money? And so we've been going back to basically recreate, the wheel and stuff. And now that we have that, now moving forward, when we had that joint meeting with the ZBA, the planning board, and the town board, that was one of the things we talked about, was moving forward, not accepting open space, without knowing, A, do we want it? Is this land that we want to accept? What kind of process is in place? What kind of money is there? And so I think we even asked the planning board to actually come up with the recommendation
Yep.
to put a procedure in place, so we should probably follow up
great.
on that
That's good.
and stuff. And one of the things I will tell you, again, in just trying to do what we're doing, I have to give Kelly in Stacy's office an incredible amount of credit, and I thought I had it here to show you guys, but it's up in my office, I'll make you copies. She has gone back and looked at money that's been put into escrow and what's been collected and not been collected. Last year, the year before, tons of money wasn't collected. She has gone back and collected over $50,000 to $60,000 from projects that owed us money, that she has gone back and has been collecting and collecting and collecting. And I have a chart I'll share with you that shows all of the escrow that's owed, who's paid up, who still owes money, who we'll probably never see because we didn't do the proper work. But they are really staying on top of now making sure we've got the escrow, that we collected, the money comes to us, and then I'm sure that they will never once again let sloppy bookkeeping be a part of our
That's great.
I have a question
consciousness.
on the rate, if you don't mind me just
What?
asking.
On the what?
On the rate.
$65 an hour.
Is that per person?
We have one person that does it.
Okay, so there wouldn't be 2 people traveling and doing it?
Nope. It's one person, she does it all, she's amazing.
And also CWOSP did go out and look at several people besides the Walker Valley Land Trust.
To see
and
what the rate would be.
To see what the rate is, and this is actually at the lower end, and you
Yeah, I
can,
just
I know you
wanted-
work for them, but you can quote it, this is actually on the lower end of what's considered
Okay.
the reasonable customary rate.
Fine.
So what the process will be, just really quickly, is CWASP already, in the meeting that I was at with the Walker Valley Land Trust, and some of the members of CWASP were there. We went through those. They're going to start to go back, pull all the information together, look at what we have in the file, see where there's a baseline. Then they'll make a determination of what they think their next step should be. They'll bring that recommendation back to us. We'll approve their plan and the expenditures, and then they'll go and basically say to Walker Valley Land Trust here, and then they'll do it, and they'll come back to us.
Travel.
Okay, wait a minute, because I'm not clear on the procedure yet. So, Clean Water and Open Space and the Wallkill Valley Land Trust is gonna determine what they wanna do first, and then they're gonna present it to the town board before they incur
Yes,
the cost?
yes.
That's my understanding, because we need some prioritization of this. You have 12 easements. Some of these date back to 1977.
Right, so you
What,
would
what's
need
the status of this? How important
Clean
is this?
water and
Right.
open space to help guide you with that.
Right. We
Okay.
want to know. We want to know what's everything you have, and give us a priority of what you want us to start at first.
Right.
So I mean, and by you, I mean clean water and open
Okay,
space.
the
Act.
reason I ask is because then the last paragraph was not clear to me. So what I thought was that clean water and open space, after conferring with Wallkill Valley Land Trust, was going to either in a memo or a presentation, tell us what you guys had come up with, would tell the town board what they anticipated, and then the board would say, move ahead with it, and then you would submit the invoices. So, because the simple language of provided, however, that all expenditures shall be approved by the town board can be loosely translated as an interpretation that vouchers will be submitted, such as the last sentence, invoices clearly itemizing actions and time spent. Yeah, they'll go into the voucher process and they have to be approved by the town board. But at that point, the services are already performed and it's been under someone else's direction and not the town board's. So
So I'm wondering, Gene, actually, and just to throw Kevin under the bus, because he is our non-paid attorney right now. I'm kind of like you, I mean, we definitely want this, you know, the stewardship
well,
of it.
I
Should
have a
this be
slight amendment if you want to hear
Well,
it.
not even amendment though, should this be a much more, we've never made an agreement or of anyone that's just even one page. Should it be a little bit more of a detail?
Well, if I can just answer that really quickly.
Yeah.
Joe Morello did look at this.
Okay.
So,
A few
so
times,
he
yeah.
looked at it a number of times,
Yeah,
and
it's
actually.
had several drafts in the past week from
Okay.
Joe.
Okay, so,
from
so
Joe.
Joe, and you will see a bill, you know, approving Joe's work on this. Okay, so
Not
Joe
me.
did see it, because there's ultimately nothing that I will bring to the board ever that has not been run by Joe if it's a contract.
Thank you.
And so that's a given. So Joe did see it, and as a matter of fact, Joe and I spoke this afternoon because Joe felt that it was not clear about the fact of CWAS being able to expend money without town board approval. So Joe was the one who actually put in the language that said, provided, however, that all expenditures shall be approved by the town board.
But
So-
I think if you
but if you
add
wanna-
prior to
Sure.
CWOSP authorization to the Wallkill Valley
Sure.
Land Trust.
So you want to make that amendment?
I'm making that amendment, thank you very much. I make a motion that we approve the proposal with my friendly amendment of the addition of, all expenditures shall be approved by the town board prior to CWOSP authorizing Wallkill Valley Land Trust to proceed.
Do you have a second?
Second?
Kevin, you look perplexed?
I'm trying to think how in practice that's going to work.
Well, I don't, I really see no problem, because CWASP is gonna sit, they're gonna go through that, they're gonna come up with a plan, they'll come to the town board, say, this is the plan we want, we'll say, great, we approve it, and then they go hire the Wallkill Valley Land Trust.
And then nobody will question their vouchers and the expenses.
Okay.
Okay?
And I'm really trying to protect the Wallkill Valley Land Trust.
The travel time here, is that from site to site, or is that to the site and back to the site?
The travel time,
From the Wallkill Valley Land Trust to go to the house?
does that
in
include
New Paltz?
mileage?
It's, we've generally, and I don't think we've included mileage on this. I think it was just the travel time, and this is all within New Paltz, so that shouldn't be too extreme at all.
Okay.
I mean, you're talking to someone who serves southern Ulster County, and we travel all over Timbuktu, so,
Okay, so this.
Lynn doesn't always take the scenic route. It's a pretty, she
got
needs to get
places
home
to
and make
go
dinner,
and
so,
people to see.
she doesn't mess around with that part, and I don't think we've included mileage in that. That's something the land trust would compensate for her and not include in this what we've charged, so.
Okay, so all in favor?
Well, before we get this,
Okay.
look,
Okay,
Brian, I
sorry.
apologize, we're still, and we
Sure.
are, the only part that I don't see in this version, which was in another version I did see, and I apologize which one, is there was an annual report and I don't see it in this version. And that was one of the things I was definitely interested in, was seeing that there is an annual report that shows what was monitored, so we would know. And maybe I'm the only one that wants that, but I.
Oh, no,
That
I
makes
mean,
sense.
And was there a reason, Joe removed the annual report?
I-
That was in a past version
It
of
was in
it.
this
Wait a minute, I
version?
thought that this was an annual process.
It is an annual process.
Oh, well then if it's an annual
We'll perform
process,
annual, okay.
Okay, yeah, we'll report, where would you
Produce
say?
a-
I knew I
produce
saw
a-
it
So
somewhere.
it was in
I produce a report.
what would be
What's this right here?
the third paragraph here. It used to say the Walcott Valley Land Trust will perform annual monitoring.
Right, annual that's what I saw.
Joe actually altered that, and one of the reasons we've also discussed altering that is that we're almost to the end of 2012 as this is, and that
Right.
was the one suggestion I had, is to change the 2012 to include 2013,
Yeah.
since we're now moving on to next year. Monitoring should happen annually. We monitor all of our easements annually. It's required by the IRS. We highly recommend that the town monitors their annually, but it does depend on what prioritization of these properties happens.
Okay.
So I think that's why Joe
Well,
took it
well,
out,
let me-
but
let
I'm
me
not
just-
sure.
I'll just real quick, to answer, it says the third paragraph, the Walcott Valley Land Trust will produce a monitoring report for every monitoring visit. So we will get a report.
Everything we
A
do.
monitoring visit, though, what I was kind of looking for was an annual report, a state of the easements.
That's what a monitoring report would be for all of the monitoring done.
Since you're doing it once a year, you'll be able to put it all together in one report to us, right?
Ah, I see what you're saying.
So in other words, I want to know, is it going to include, I'd like to be able to open up a binder and say, okay, we have 11, 13 properties.
Right.
Have these all been reviewed? So are we going to renew this annually? I'll ask you, are we renewing this annually?
Well, this is, Joe, because that was a question about the fact that there was no end date. Joe, well, see, this one.
I mean, should this be part
no,
of our
it says in
Yeah.
2012.
Right,
So
right,
I
yeah.
would ask,
Okay,
Should it be
so
part
let
of
would
me.
the
you be
reorg meeting?
willing to come back in January where we would do another one
well,
for the?
So would this be
so-
part of the reorg meeting?
So,
each year?
yes, so basically, let me just, what Joe has been doing recently, if you haven't noticed, is he's trying to make every
Everything
contract
end, right.
end at the end of the year, and then us renew it at the beginning of the year.
Ah.
And so, originally, in the meeting with the land trust, they talked about not putting a timeline in, because since it's like basically we hire them, and if
Right.
we
If
don't
you don't
want
want us, don't
we
call
don't hire
us.
them, and if they don't want to work for us, they don't work for us.
the way it
So
works.
they didn't want to put in a timeline, but Joe basically wanted a timeline in because he's trying to give a time frame for all of our contracts, so then we can revisit
Right.
it and renew it again, and we could amend it as needed. And so that was Joe's recommendation.
Okay.
So it's up to the board. I mean, if you want to make it 2013, Joe's not going to tell us
But-
not to. I'm just saying that was Joe who had said, and what he's trying to do is get everything to in the beginning of the year, we renew the contracts, we look at them, if we want to change them, amend
Do it
them.
at the reorg.
Yeah, I was
we can.
wondering, is Kevin's got a good point there, and we were just talking about that, can we also add the verbiage in here that this contract will be reviewed at the annual
Sure.
town board reorganizational meeting?
If you
Because
want.
then it forces us to put it on the
Absolutely,
reorg.
absolutely.
So as a friendly amendment to your amendment, Gene, can I put that this contract will be reviewed at the annual reorganization
Reorganization meeting.
meeting for the town council?
Reviewed for renewal.
Thank you. Reviewed for renewal at the town board's annual reorganizational meeting.
Do you want to
So
second
then we
that?
will unfortunately embody future town boards to have to look at it each year.
I will second that.
Well, it'd be nice to review, it'd be nice to do it for 5 years, but I understand your point. 'cause
Right.
Then it gives you guys also, if you say, look, we don't want to do this work anymore, we're
This
not going to renew it.
contract
Right, and
will
to
be,
answer-
I'm sorry,
No,
It's
that's
okay, go ahead. No, you do.
reviewed annually at the,
Reviewed for
you mean
renewal.
it annually at the
Actually-
reorganization?
For,
Reviewed for renewal.
reviewed for renewal.
For renewal annually
Yes.
or?
All
Annually,
in favor?
annually, you have it at the, he's skipping ahead, isn't he?
For renewal,
At the annual.
At the,
but only at this next annual?
No, every year,
Or
every year.
annually
It will be a
at the
1 year.
reorg meeting? They
Annually.
mean two different things.
annually at the reorganization meeting. Annually at the reorganization meeting.
I'm frustrating the lawyer.
Okay, come on. Let's go,
He
guys.
doesn't look very frustrated. I have to
He's
say.
already moved on. He's already moved on, he's
Okay.
off.
And
So-
to answer your question about the monitoring reports, absolutely,
I
but it
totally
all
understand.
depends
No,
on
I
how
see.
many we do.
I see
So-
what Joe did here, absolutely, yes, I do
Okay,
understand
so
that
is
now.
everybody okay?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion so carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very, very much.
Thank
We
you very much.
appreciate it.
Okay, Next thing we have is the intermunicipal agreement for the police for the New Paltz Central School District. Again, it's a, Joe did look at it. It's the same that we've been doing for years and years and years, and Joe saw no problem with it. And this is for when they use police for community events.
I make a motion authorizing the intermunicipal agreement for police security services with the New Paltz Central School District.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion so carried. Next, we have the USIA video contract, which has been lying around for a long time. So it's our public access coordinator and videographer. And I just want to double check, is it for the, does Joe have,
Yep.
April 1st to December 30, April 1st to December
Yeah.
31st, 209.
There was one typo in there, but he hasn't changed it yet.
Oh,
I
okay.
noticed it, and that was the 209.
Okay, so you want to, let's amend this
Well,
to say 20.
where?
It's on
On page
page
three.
2, page 2.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry, the
Page
third
three.
page, which is numbered as page 2 in the bottom right-hand corner. Halfway through the page, it says, total contract from April 1st through December 31st, 209.
Make it 12.
Okay,
That's
so
actually,
it's,
no, yeah, 12.
Okay, so any more conversation?
well,
Did we
yeah,
get a motion
yeah,
in a second to
can I-
discuss it?
No.
Second?
Well, nobody made a motion.
No.
So
I
make
thought
a
you did.
motion.
So moved.
And Kevin, you want a second for
Second.
discussion? Okay, go ahead, Jean.
My first question is, so that this is a contract that we're gonna look at in January?
Yep,
Yep.
that's why it ends December 31st.
Oh. It's on there.
Although, is this right? If,
Oh,
maybe we should take that out, because it's cost per hour, 43 hours a month.
no, I didn't calculate that. I calculated a lot of different things.
I'm just, can you calculate that? I'm just asking Jean that,
Well,
because the
but aren't
contract got
you-
changed to April 1st to December 31st, and that cost, I just want to make sure that that cost was verified, that it works out to the
Well,
numbers.
the annual was 11,
But-
the annual is 11,609, I think.
But so it should really be from January 1st, not April 1st.
I think it is. Let me take a look.
So we should really
Quick math.
change.
Gee, it's
It's
11.
It's not a half a year.
I think it's 11,600 is the.
Oh, you know why it is? It's because we pay half of the year and the village pays the other half of the year. That's why. But actually, I think we've been paying for the first half of the year. You know what, we might want to table this to the next meeting and double check a couple of things, because I think we've been paying the first half of the year, and I think the village now picks it up, so I think these dates might have to be changed.
Yeah, based on paying for 9 months, yeah, the figure's right. 9 months,
Yeah, but it should be 6 months, because we're splitting it with the village.
yeah?
Mm-hmm,
Uh-huh,
uh-huh,
you're right.
I know.
You know what, let's, yeah, because, you know, Gee, I don't get the right math either.
Uh-huh. Okay, why don't we just, I know this has been a long time coming, we need to get this done, but let's just table it.
Well, you
and
know,
just
we
go
have a
through-
special meeting that you're
Yeah,
proposing,
we're gonna
so.
do, yeah, we can do this next
So it's
week.
potentially, we could get this done even before the month is out. the
Well, what
next-
I'm asking for is the board to have a, unfortunately, I'm sorry to have another meeting during the summer, but to have a meeting next Thursday.
I really think I just have to kill you now, Susan.
Yeah, please kill me now, because I
Thursday
didn't think
what
we would
time?
have the meeting tonight. Okay, but to have a meeting next Thursday for the purposes of budget conversation, continuation on the police, because I don't think it's fair to make decisions relative to how we're gonna structure the police department without a full board. It just doesn't feel right, and I feel like Kitty would want to be a part of the conversation. And so, and we have, you know, we're gonna be getting the controller's report, we need to talk about that. So what I'd like to do is schedule a meeting for next Thursday at 7:30, and if that's okay with everybody, we'll table this to next week and get this done next week. So is that okay with everybody?
Well, which, we got a lot of questions here.
It's a fifth Thursday, so.
The 30th.
Yeah.
So on Thursday the 30th is
Yep.
the, this is available? So 7:30?
Yep,
So now that we've kind of left this topic.
yeah, okay. So we're gonna table this until next week and just, you know, and work out some of the details,
Okay.
okay? So
I
next,
withdraw my motion then.
okay. Kevin, will you second the withdrawal?
I do.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion so carried. Okay, labor attorney contract, that's from Bill Wallens, basically just renewing the contract with our labor attorney, and it's a retainer agreement between the town of New Paltz and Norma Wallens, which expired on June 30th, 2012, and luckily he's still acting as a labor attorney, despite the fact that he's not under contract. So this is for July 1st, 2012 through June 30th, 2015. What he's saying is, please note that the first year of the retainer proposes no increase from prior year, recognizing the financial difficulties facing the town. I'm proposing a slight increase for the second and third year.
And also, if you go back and look, Gene, because you're like me, like look at monies, he did not increase the previous 2 years that I've been on the board. So he has maintained the same rate the 2 years I've been on the board.
Okay. I have a question.
Sure.
Because the contract is for July 1st, 2012 to June 30th, 2013. So in light of...
2015, with light of what Joe said.
Oh, okay. So in light, why are we not going with a contract till the end of 2012 and renewing his contract?
Because this is a different lawyer.
Well, I understand that, but why is it not a December end? Why does it end in June when our fiscal year and everything is December 31st?
Well, I
I'm
think,
just asking.
I
If you
think
don't
because
have an answer,
I
I'll
do
wait.
probably have an answer, and it was probably because when we hired him the first time back during my last tour of duty, when we brought him in, we probably brought him in June of 1997, and so his annual is probably based on when we brought him in.
I see.
So I
We just
kinda-
pay him, we pay him per month anyway, so it's just,
Yes, you do.
yes, we do.
Oh, yes, we do. I kind of defer to Gene too. I'd like to go in the vein that our attorney has been bringing us to is, do you think it would be a big deal to have it end, Gene, on December 31st?
I'll
No,
tell you-
no, no, no. I was
2014.
just asking.
No, but I mean,
I'll tell you why not, though.
Okay.
Because basically, he's not giving us an increase for the entire year, and the entire year was July 1st, 2012 to July 1st, 2013. So if we ended it at the end of this year,
No, I mean, no, that's what I said, no, it would be, I wouldn't mind, but should we make that December
Yes.
31st, 2014? In other words, taking 6 months off, because then that would put it into another board, and it also matches your budget. Gene, does that seem to make sense, is that we would end it instead of June 30th, 2015, that we end it December 31st, 2014, so it starts to follow our budget calendar?
Well, I was just asking if there
No,
was a
no, I agree,
real
but I'm just
answer.
wondering, then all of our contracts, to Joe Moriello's point too, then all of our contracts start working on our budget year instead of at different times.
I mean, my sense
I'd
is
rather
for,
extend it 6 more months at the discounted rate instead of taking 6 months.
No, I'm
off.
with you too, I'm just trying to
See
make
if
it.
he wants to extend
so
it
so you
to
want me
December
to ask him if we could do it to December 31st, 2015?
Yeah,
Or net, yeah, yeah, so it matches our,
and then we'll just do annual renewals.
this is why we have an attorney on the
Because
board.
if he's not gonna raise his rate,
I don't see, I don't think he's gonna have a problem, so if you guys want me to ask him
Could he
to,
change that to December 31st?
2015. So would you like me to ask him, do you want me to, would you like to amend this, make the motion? I'll tell him that we approved it based on that, and if he wants to change it,
Yes.
I'll come back to you. Okay, so, would somebody like to make a motion amending the
I think
contract
Kevin just
to?
did.
I did. I
Okay,
made that
somebody
motion.
second?
Second?
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion so carried. Okay, ZBA member employee letter. What you have is a letter
For Edward.
for Ed Burke. Ed Burke was appointed to the ZBA, but because he works for a financial institution, his financial institution wants us to sign a letter that says the letter relates to the Zoning Board of Appeals volunteer position, the town of New Paltz. The organization is aware that Christine E. Burke Jr., is that his name?
Christian.
Christian? Christian?
Good
Okay.
boy.
I got-
Oh,
okay.
Now watch
Christian, okay, Christian. Christian E. Burke Jr. is employed by Morgan Stanley Smith Barney
Christine.
LLC. The organization does not believe there's any conflict with respect to Ed Burke serving on the Zoning Board of Appeals while employed by Morgan Stanley Smith Barney LLC. The organization further understands that Morgan Stanley Smith Barney LLC and its affiliate may now or may in the future do business with the organization and its affiliate. The organization is aware of no law, rule, regulation, or policy that would preclude Morgan Stanley Smith Barney or its affiliates from doing business with the organization and its affiliates as a result of Ed Burke's position. Joe reviewed it. Joe said this was fine. And if nobody has a problem, I'd like a motion, or for purposes of discussion, a motion and a second, then we can discuss.
I'll move it to discuss it.
Somebody want a second?
Second.
Okay, Jean?
Why do we need to do it?
Because this company wants it.
Really?
Yep.
They have a perceived conflict of interest with him sitting on the zoning board
No,
of
they
appeals?
just wanted us to sign off on,
He has a volunteer position on the zoning board of appeals, really?
Actually, just so you know too, and I've spoken to Ed, is that his company just wants to ensure that the town is fully aware that he's employed by a financial institution, and that should anything arise, that they have done everything in their due diligence to make sure that we are aware of it. So they are actually just ensuring that we are aware, and I have spoken to Ed, and he is also planning on filling out a full disclosure form.
Okay,
to file
and do we
with us.
use Morgan Stanley for any of the affiliated supplemental benefits that employees are allowed to purchase or anything like that?
Well, I think what's
I mean,
more
as far
important
as I
question
know.
is he's only going to be acting as a volunteer member of the ZBA. So the more important question is, do we have anything that involves the ZBA that involves Morgan Stanley? And the answer to that is no. There is nothing in front of the ZBA, nor no financial involvement between the ZBA and Morgan Stanley.
Yeah, the relationship would be between the town board and Morgan Stanley,
not the ZBA.
I'm not even aware of us even having the town board and Stanley, to be honest with you, but I'd have to
I don't
go
understand, Kevin, why do they need a disclaimer
Has there
from
been
the
a second?
town
Has
board?
there been a second?
Yes, yeah, no,
Yes.
yes, yeah, I said.
You're dealing with a large Wall Street firm
Mhm.
that has, like most Wall Street firms, been sued for a lot of reasons. A lot of them have been good reasons too. The bottom line is, it's harmless. It doesn't hurt us in any way. They want us to know that he's employed there and there's no conflict. I'm fine with it. I don't think we should spend another second.
We spent too many seconds on it already, actually.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Motions are-
Aye, aye,
Motions are carried. Okay.
And I just want to say.
I had to ask. I mean, I
Can you
just
please-
think it's.
Can you please thank Ed Burke for
I would
his
love to thank
willingness
Ed Burke. I was
Christine,
very,
Could you
very,
thank Christine Burke
I was
for serving on
delighted
the-
when I heard you bring Ed Burke forward for us to nominate. I was surprised he was willing to give more time to the town after some of his past experiences on recreation.
Yes.
But I'm thrilled to have Ed Burke back working on our behalf, and thank you, Christina Burke. Okay, local law budget line item. What that is, what you have in front of you is something that you won't understand.
I need some explain. I
Okay.
I
just
have
really
no
have a
understanding of this
question.
subject.
Okay,
Go ahead.
nobody would have any understanding, okay. What basically, Sally Rhodes had commented many a time that the community voted for a bond for the library. And so when we go do the budget, if we have a hard time and have to make cuts, we're not allowed to make cuts to the money allocated to the library because that was done by referendum. So the money that the voters approved is the money that goes into the budget. Whether we have to cut other things to come up with that money, that's what happens. So Sally was saying that she believed that there should be a separate line on the tax bill that, like we have fire protection, you have water, you have, the A fund, the B fund, DBDA, the sewer, and fire district. There should be an additional line that says library, so people see the money that is allocated to the library and the tax rate that gets associated with that, because that was done by referendum. It's outside of the purview of the board to play with that money, and that's what she suggested. So Jim Quigley, the supervisor of the town of Ulster, who's been dealing with trying to get separate line items on his budget for social services and for the voting passed down through the county, he sent me this is a model of how you have to go about and ask for a local law for the county to allow you to do that separate line. So this is a model of what we do. So what Joe basically said was, if the board wants to go down this route, that I should basically get the board to authorize Joe to draft a local law for us to adopt to try to get that separate line on the tax bill.
Well-
So that's what this is about.
Okay, so now I have a better understanding. Is it possible, and Gene and/or Kevin can answer this, because I have two parts to it. I'll defer, our attorney has deferred to Gene. If we're going to do this, I would like the expenses to be deferred to the library line. So would we ask the library to prepare, there's top of my head, $330,000 a year is what was passed by the voters.
$231,000.
No, 300, I believe.
No, it's
Oh, is it in here? I
231,000.
apologize, 231.
That's what I think it is.
So that's the bond vote, but then I think, don't we also then give them extra money?
No, it's just that one
This is
fee.
down?
Is it 230, regardless?
Yeah.
So Gene, what I'd like to do though is have the library pay for the legal expenses. We are already potentially exceeding the budget on legal expenses this year. So to put it simply, I don't believe we have the funds to pay an attorney for much else this year. I would like the library to pay for it. Is it possible for us to go back to the library and ask them to prepare the local law? They may be able to negotiate better legal rates than we could, and then have our lawyer just vet it? Or can we take the money out of the library
Well,
line?
let me ask a question before Gene answers that. Kevin, looking at something like this, could you modify it for us to,
Welcome to the library board. Think of that answer.
Okay.
You made it very clear.
Okay, I had to
I
ask.
actually like Jeff's idea.
Well, the
And
only
I don't
thing
know
is-
which one we can do,
Okay,
and
well-
that's why I'm asking you, Gene, is under budgets, can we go and take money from their budget line?
You cannot take money from that 321,000
There you
because
go,
it was
321.
done by referendum.
Okay.
Gee, we can ask them to pay for this.
Can we,
You could ask them to pay for it.
okay,
Okay,
so,
the only-
Okay, I
Okay,
don't
let
agree
me-
with you,
okay, no, that's fine.
but
Okay, well,
that's,
just let me make just one point that, again, remember, this was not the library board asking. This was the former library board president
Right.
saying that this is what she thought we should be doing, and that it was a fair way to reflect the money.
I think the
So-
taxpayer should know what portion of their tax dollars
Right.
are going to the library.
I agree. However, I think it's a good idea to get the library on a separate line on the cover page of the budget. That, I'm with you.
This is actually on the
Also-
tax bill.
Yep, actually
bill.
separately on the tax bill, so when you look at it now, you'll see the Gardner Library and the New Paltz Library, you'll see them both. But I understand we have to create the local law to do it, but I'd rather just pay for it and move it, because we're moving it, this board is moving it budget-wise permanently by creating a local law. And that's why I wouldn't ask, in my opinion. I
And
would
just,
just pay for
and I do totally agree too, that it does help to have it as and that's why I thought it was 320, I thought it was 320, but it's going to cost us neighborhood of $4,000 or $5,000
Okay,
to
why
do
don't
this
we,
law.
why don't we do it this way? If
That,
you want.
and that is, just say, by the time you just so you know, Gene, by the time you do research, public hearing, publish, and pass, you're somewhere between about believe it or not, you're about $400 or $500.
Why don't we
a
do
day.
it this way?
That's
I-
what
I mean,
it's been costing for many
let
years.
me ask a question, because Quigley, Supervisor Quigley sent this, which really was sort of the model that Joe could follow, why don't, if you want to table this again for next week, not that I want to add a lot to next week, and God knows what's going to come up in the next couple of days, let me ask Joe to give us a sense of what it would cost for him to draft this, and then we can come back and decide if we want to do it. If it's $5,000, we might say, maybe next year we'll do it.
Right,
You
there
know, but if he
probably
says it's
is.
like,
Well, his drafting is going to be, again, just, publishing alone is over $1,000 by the time you're done, believe it or not, publishing and noticing, because you have to put it into paper, and then publish, you're over $1,000 just on that. So Joe's fees may only be $2,000, but by the time you're done publishing and then you do public hearing, you're now over $4,000 would be the bottom, $5,000 would be the
well,
top.
why don't we put this aside? Let me try to see if I can assess what
Because,
it costs.
I mean, you said this to us a couple days ago, and just in my
Yeah.
very minimal research, a fire protection district law is pretty far away from a library. Because I looked up also how
Yeah.
I looked up how
Yeah, but
Gardner
there's
did theirs.
probably a
Right.
library local
Yeah.
law switching the budget so that
Well,
it's visible. It's
and-
probably already written.
No, the only ones I could find actually were with library districts, and we don't have a consolidated library
But
district.
the thing with the-
So I did find those, Gene, I looked them up, and the ones I could find, all the local laws I could find, and again, this was with only a few days of research, all involved
But-
those like Gardner, which involve a library district. We unfortunately don't, not unfortunately, we just don't have
Yeah.
that.
Let me just point out that what this really is, though, it's not so much about the fire district. It's really just what you have to do to ask the, asking for the chargeback for the tax bill. So it's really
Well,
not.
it does, yeah, I'm with you, but it actually kind of, it is important,
Mhm.
that the district actually is an important part of this, because as and Gene could go into it in more detail than I could, districts are very special taxing districts, and everything I could find involved, like a fire protection involves multiple communities, a district involves multiple communities, consolidated libraries can involve multiple communities, so it's
Well,
different. than
again,
what
That's
we're
why we
doing.
can charge Gardner and Esopus and Rosendale.
But
and
again-
everybody who
Well, that would be
uses
up to the
those.
library then to change, not us.
But
That's a
really,
different-
I
that's
think
completely
again,
different.
what this is really
Yes.
it's really just going back and asking the county for permission to allow us to do this.
Through a local enactment. So if everyone's prepared to spend $4,000 or
No,
$5,000,
but why don't
that's
we-
where
no,
we're
no,
gonna.
let's-
There's no way we can do it just by asking them to do it for us?
I
You
do
need
not
to
think
pass
so.
everything I looked at, it requires that you pass a local law, that it then be put in, that it can't be touched.
Why
Well,
don't-
Because it
that
makes
would
it
be
a
the
separate-
question, I guess, Susan. That
Right.
would be the
Right.
question.
Which is-
Are we creating a library district?
No, the library has to do, we have to do that through a
No,
vote,
we're
the
not
voters
creating-
have to do that, and then we
we're
have
not
to do
creating a
that through the
library district.
library.
Then we don't, if we don't have a district, maybe it doesn't come out of the budget and it's not a separate line item,
No.
unless it is a
Who
district.
would
No,
the
no, no,
county
no, no,
can answer
no.
that?
I can try to call the controller and talk to him,
Yeah.
but again, this is not about it being a district or not. It's because of referendum. There's
Yes.
nothing in our budget that we do as a town that has a portion of the money committed by a referendum.
Okay.
Everything else is up to us as a board to decide how we want to fund. But even if we have no money left, we're still obligated
Right.
to put 321,000
So do you want
for
me to
this
do this,
referendum.
though? Do you want me to call the county and
Sure,
ask? Okay,
sure.
so here's what I'll do.
Okay.
I'll call the county to see, first we can separate out, if you want
Sure.
to check with Joe to see if he can give you
Mhm.
a ballpark figure of what he believes.
Well, why don't you, I mean, if you could do is, I mean, you might be able to talk to real property and talk to the controller, and I'm sure Elliot would be more than happy to help
Yep.
us. So talk to them first, let me
Yep.
know what you find out, and then I'll call Joe to follow up because,
Table it.
you know,
Yep.
and we'll talk about this next week if we're ready.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Can I just say
Sure.
something? Okay, if you think about the cover page of your budget, okay,
Mhm.
you have the A fund, the B fund, the DA fund, and the DB fund. Those are your operating funds.
Yes.
Every other fund on that cover sheet, on the tax bills, is a special district. The stormwater, the waters, and the sewers. So I think that moving the library creates a library district. This might be bigger than you think.
That's what I'm gonna find out.
Okay, we'll
That's
find
what I
out.
Let me call the
Okay, we'll
controller's
find that
office
out.
and I'll find
I mean,
out.
we might not be able to do it, but,
Right.
but again.
Got it.
Okay, so we'll table that, and so, a couple things before we do the, minutes, prepays, all that kind of stuff. One, everybody clap, say congratulations, mazel tov, whatever word you want to use. Our annual report was filed.
Thank you.
For March, April, May, June, July, August, 5 months late. But it was filed, and so I am giving a copy to the clerk for the purposes of the record. You all got it emailed to you, and so I just want to say that the annual report is filed.
When did
It's-
you do that today?
I emailed it, last week was the draft, I think I emailed everybody, and I might have forwarded this today, I have to.
That's fine.
you know,
No, I just didn't
But,
have
but it, she had it ready, but then she actually did the filing online last night.
Okay, good.
Okay, so I forwarded it to everybody today, and I'll just wrap up before we do the other stuff. Very exciting news, exciting news. Today, the county executive signed into law a no brine local law in Ulster County, so no brine is allowed to be on the streets of Ulster County. And today, what I'm going to be giving you is our ban bill, okay? And we won't do anything with it tonight. We'll have to put it on the agenda to move forward with how we want to, but everybody, you got it. But what George did, at my request, was to make it as comprehensive as possible. So while we hired him to do a ban bill, what we did is we're getting 3 bills. A local law amending Chapter 140 of the Town Code to prohibit natural gas extraction and/or oil exploration and extraction. Then we're doing a local law to prohibit the disposal of natural gas and/or oil production waste into the municipal sewer system. And we're doing a local law to prohibit brine on town roads. So we're taking a very proactive stance of doing 3 bans relative to hydrofracking in New Paltz. So you all have it, we'll read it, and then we'll,
And you can scratch the question off I had, just so you know, I spoke to Jim Littlefoot, who does know this. We can do nothing about the throughway going through the town borders. It has, that has to do with federal and interstate commerce, and so we can do,
so I
just
guess,
town
I guess
roads.
just as next steps is, we could all read this, and then I guess what we have to do is set a public hearing. So everybody read it, and
Oh, okay.
so everybody read it, and maybe next week we could set that public hearing so we can get this moving, because if the governor should move forward to put out the permits after Labor Day, which is what's supposedly going to happen, we want to try to get how we feel about this on the books sooner than later, because he said he won't go into communities that don't want it. So this is great, and so with that, so then the only thing left to do is minutes and warrants.
Want to do the warrants?
Sure, let's do the warrant. Jean, you got the warrant?
Well, I just have, yeah, you want to talk about it first?
Not really, but go ahead.
Okay, so the first item is Romer Wallen's Golden Minnow. I'm okay with that, being charged to the A fund. The second one is for Dave Clauser for $7,750.40. However, there is $3,731.20 that is a bill specifically on the Lent subdivision, and it's titled so, and if they have an escrow, I would like it charged to the
Yeah,
escrow and not the B fund.
Yeah, you're just gonna change the,
I don't know what, I don't know the escrow code.
So
Yeah,
it should
so
be
we'll
a
just-
different account.
yeah. I think-
Yes, I would like it charged to the escrow.
Yeah, and it should be charged to the escrow. I
Okay,
think.
the balance of that voucher is all A fund. Okay, it's like sewer 6, which I know that it's general town business, sewer 6, and
Well, that'll end up being on a
a do
do from, right?
the fairgrounds, floodplain, recycle center, town infrastructure. So that's A fund, I'm okay with that. But $3,731.20. This one is the Lent escrow. Then the bill for $217.60 to Dave Clauser is being charged to the B fund. I would like it charged to the Stop and Shop escrow if they have one.
I think they do.
They do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's what they're requesting back
Yeah.
until we finish that.
Oh, okay,
So that
then,
we
yeah,
do have it, that's-
please,
yeah.
charge it to the escrow. Rapport, Myers, Whitbeck, Shorten, Rodenhausen is $14,318 for the wetlands laws charged to the A fund. I'm fine with that. Then there is a Dave Clauser bill for $11,972.56. This one, a piece of it is town business, and then if there is a pyramid escrow,
Yes, there is.
Park Point escrow,
Yes, there is.
New Paltz Views,
Yep,
Thomas Waning subdivision,
yep, the one, yep, there's a,
and Hidden Ridge.
yep, all those have escrows.
Okay.
They're all still active files.
Yes, please. All
Yeah.
to the associated bills, to their associated escrows, as listed on Dave's bills, which are quite comprehensive, instead of to the B fund.
Yeah, I think
And Laura might have a comment on that, just,
Well, under recycling, that should go under the 8189 account because it's reimbursable through the grant, and I do have a purchase order. so if you want to pull that, is that separated out with hours attached?
What actually, I mean, our bookkeeper's not here. Somebody else, Carol West, who's been doing
Do you
an absolute yeoman's job. She prepared these because it was last minute, and so we can, on Monday, basically reallocate to make sure that it's billed to all the appropriate places.
Oh, well, that was $0.
That was what?
$0 for you. Jeez, you got cheated.
Okay.
Yeah, was there, Kevin brings up a good point.
Well, there's sometimes, Dave.
Was there supposed to be money in there?
What
Did you
is-
have an expenditure you were aware of?
I do, for development of the site, improvements to the building, but if you just said 0.
Dave does a lot of work where he ends up not charging us for it.
But is it reimbursable through
Yeah,
a grant?
well, it's reimbursable, but we pay for it upfront now, and we get reimbursed in a couple of years. And so Dave is really, really gracious, and a lot of times not billing for certain things. And so,
Zero.
so if it's zero, it just
Zero.
means
It's always zero.
he
Zero,
ends up,
zero.
he donated his time on that particular part of the project. Okay, so do you move it with your modifications?
I will move it.
And just anywhere, just.
Second?
When,
Second.
and just where you're making the minutes, anywhere where she said Lent Farms, I believe you mean New Paltz Views, right?
I do.
Okay, no, that's fine. No,
said
I know you
New
said Lent
Paltz
Farms, but
Views.
it's
Yeah,
New
it
Paltz
is.
Views is the actual.
Yeah, but why do they have a sign that says Lent Farms?
And actually, Stop and Shop is actually, what are the brothers?
No, it's not, well, okay.
Yeah, Mary. No,
It's
what is it?
Kempner.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Kempner,
I know,
so
but the
Stop
bill
and-
is labeled Stop and
Is
Shop.
it labeled? I think the
Yeah.
file is.
But I think that's because the Stop and Shop, that's the escrow account was
Yeah.
for when they did their project, so.
Yes.
Okay, so,
All in favor?
that, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion so carried.
Aye.
You want to do the minutes?
Sure, Rosanna, would you like us to do the minutes for
I
you?
only sent two.
I would say that
You
Rosanna
sent
has
two of
done an
them.
absolutely remarkable job of keeping us up to date on the minutes, and we're
Put that
pretty
in the
much,
minutes,
we're pretty
Rosanna.
much up to date. I mean,
Put
we-
that in the minutes, please.
Yes,
Actually,
no, seriously.
I would like to even extend that to be what I spent 4 years discussing and was told I was absolutely wrong, that is not one of the jobs of what Roseanne is now doing. It now turns out that it actually is one of the very clear pieces, is that they are supposed to be keeping accurate minutes and they're supposed to be available within 2 weeks. And I was told for 4 years that was not the case, and we actually spent money as a town board to have someone else keep minutes. So I just want to say, Roseanne, thank you very much. We get them even under 2 weeks.
We get them 3 days later.
We get them about 2 to 3 days
So-
later, and I deeply appreciate it. I think we only have 2 to catch up on right
Yeah,
now.
no, we don't.
Yeah.
These are it.
That's
I would
okay.
like
Yeah,
to make
this
a
is
motion
Leslie's plan.
adopting
Yeah.
the minutes of August 9th.
Second.
Any
Second.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the minutes of August, I believe, 16th?
Yeah.
Oh, was it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
August 16th?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion so carried. Anybody like to make a motion to, I just want to say one thing really quickly before we end. I just want to let everybody know that we have started the transition with building and grounds, moving up to the highway. Chris and I had a meeting a couple of days ago with all the building and grounds guys and all of the highway guys. We met with them here, they were all here, and we talked all about the move, the transition, where we're going, how we're moving forward. And they are now all reporting to the highway, they're all reporting to Chris, and Bob Ledhorn and Barbara Cuddington are right now working on trying to put the water and sewer component together so we can have a recommendation, hopefully shortly, for us to approve on how we'll move forward with water and sewer. But the transition has taken place, they're all reporting up there, we're getting them out of the building downstairs, which is where they needed to get out of there, and that's moving forward, so that's happening.
So your office may not smell like gasoline sometime
Maybe not,
soon.
maybe not,
That would
right.
be-
I would like to
Okay,
make
so-
a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
so carried.